Good afternoon. Today is November 14th. I'd like to welcome you to the Oakland City Planning Commission meeting and ask if you have cell phones, pagers, or similar devices, if you would either turn those off or silence them now. We would appreciate that. If you are not the applicant and you've come to talk to us about a case today, there are sign-up sheets. They look like this. They're on the table right outside the chambers. And if you would complete it for the case you'd like to talk to us about and give it to our staff, we'd be happy to hear you when we hear the case. And with that, the minutes of our October 24th meeting, Commissioners. Move approval. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Cast your votes. And the minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay. And next, Russell, continuances.
We have 6 uncontested requests for continuance today. Item 27, PUD 1515. Item 28, PUD 1516. Item 29, SPUD 734. Item 30, C6539. And item 31, C6540 will all be continued until December the 12th. Item 32 is SPUD 731. That will be continued until January the 23rd.
Did anyone come today to talk to us about any of the cases that Russell just read, items 27 through 33, or 32, excuse me. We will hear item 33 in order. Sir, you need to come to the microphone, please, if you would. And if you would give us your name and address, please.
Greg Barnhart, 15600 South Virginia Avenue, item 31.
It's been requested that it be continued to December 12th. Can you come back on December 12th, or what is your concern?
We have concerns about the PUD that's being proposed.
Okay.
But, we came to make a statement. We came today not knowing there was a request to defer this.
See if we're...
This is the associated plat. The PUD is on to be heard today. And they're deferring the plat.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll be hearing the zoning today, but not the platting.
Okay.
So you can speak to us when we hear the zoning case.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you say 32? We're going to hear it as well?
We're going to hear 33.
33, okay.
Okay, Commissioners. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the continuances. Cast your votes. That's approved.
We have 3 new requests for continuance today. Item 11 is PUD 1507. Item 13, PUD 1512. And item 20, PC 10351. These are all requested to continue until December the 12th.
Which one is the Lincoln Boulevard case? Excuse me just a minute. I thought there was a continuance request on Lincoln Boulevard. Mike, what type?
That was just a verbal request. We didn't put it on the agenda.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Anyone come to talk to us about items 11, 13, or 20 today?
I move the additional continuance.
Second. Okay. Cast your votes, and those continuances are approved. Are there any continuance requests from the public today? Okay.
Okay, we are on the
Consent docket.
Consent docket. There were 6 items on the consent docket today. Item 1 is C6544, final plat of Rockwell Village. Item 2, C6128, extension of the final plat of Northwood Business Park. Item 3, C6014, an extension of the preliminary plat of Meadow Park Addition. Item 4, C 5611, which I believe there will be a request to add a technical evaluation. Item 5 is ED 204. Staff is requesting continuance on that item. Item 6 is PUD SP 1490, application for a specific plan for PUD 1490.
We're going to need to pull item 4 to get a T modification on the record, and item 5 is requested as a continuance from staff, and I would like to, if not continue it, hear it separately in any case. Is anyone here today on any of items just read, 1 through 6? Come to the podium, please. And if you would give us your name and address, please.
Victoria Pinwell. My address is 7800 Southwest 85th Circle,
And you're here on which case?
number 5.
And we're talking about continuing it. The staff wants it continued.
Yes, we did not know that there was going to be a continuance, so we're not really sure what we're supposed to do.
Well, do you object to the continuance, first of all? That would be-
Yeah, well,
You'd like to have it heard today, is that it?
I would like to have it heard, but I don't, we're not understanding why there was a continuance.
Well, the staff is requesting continuance to complete their review. You're talking about private roads possibly becoming public, and Adir can explain it, but there's some easements needed.
Yes, we have some storm sewers that are private too. Typically, those need to be in their own easement, because if we just accept the street without the easement, then we're taking responsibility for that too. So that needs to be revised.
Okay, so do we need to just get with you separately outside of this to figure out what we need
Meeting,
to
and
do?
then we can handle it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And since you're here, tell us why you want to have public rather than private streets.
Part of the problem is the school bus will not come down the street to pick the children up. They will only do it on the main access road. The neighborhood is not that big. There's only 28 lots. There's only 21 houses. But the main street is where all the kids have to go for where their school bus is. Also, we have some police officers in the neighborhood who said if people, not that this would happen, but if it were, park like a junkie trailer or something, they have no right to come down that street to tell that person to move that trailer. Only the homeowners association can move that, knock on their door and tell them to move their trailer. I think it's more like of an ease of mind kind of thing for the school buses, and knowing that the police department can come down the street and do what they need to do.
Well, the police department can go anywhere, but
Okay.
just for my information, how far would a child have to walk to get to the main street where the bus would stop?
It's right, like they stand on the main street.
I understand.
For the bus.
It's not a very far walk down to there. Maybe we have one main street and 2 cul-de-sacs, so the furthest...
It's a short walk for...
Right. It's busy down there. There's a lot of traffic, and right now, construction in the
Okay.
area.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Sorry.
What's the pleasure of the commission? Continue it? Okay. They'll be continued for the staff's review.
Okay.
For the
All right,
easements.
Thank you.
And
Need a motion for that?
yes, we need a motion to...
Move to continue item number 5.
Well, we need a motion to approve the consent docket except for items 4 and 5.
Move to approval of the consent docket with the exception of item 4 and 5.
Cast your votes, and that's approved.
I move to continue item 5.
Second.
Aren't we hearing 4?
Well, we're going to...
5.
4 we're going to hear.
Yeah, but I move to continue item 5.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue item 5 for how long, Adir? 2 weeks? December 12th?
2 weeks is enough.
Okay, 12/12.
12-12.
Cast your votes, and that's continued. And are there any other requests from the public? If not, we'll hear item 4.
Item 4 is C-5611, it's an extension of the preliminary plat of Ponderosa Estates, Ward 8.
We're just requesting that a TE be added because part of the lots are platted in the floodway, and the applicant is aware of that.
Are you aware of the
Yes,
TE
Jason
language
Spencer
change?
with Craft and Toll, and yeah, we're in agreement with stating for the record that no lots will be platted and within the floodway.
Okay, that's been added as a TE to item 4, and with that, take a motion.
With the additional TE. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 4 as amended. Cast your votes. It's approved.
All right, we're now on items requiring separate vote. Item 7 is SN 079. This is to consider a resolution changing the name of Beverly Drive to Scooters Way between Northeast 50th and Central Park Drive in Ward 7.
If you give us your name and address, please.
Yes, David Brewer, 5201 North Lincoln.
Okay? Commissioners, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, we get these applications from time to time on renaming streets, and for years, it has been rarely, if ever, granted, only on very small special occasions. And in this application, I don't think that there's any reason for us to change our policy unless there's you're dealing with presidents and kings or something like that, maybe, or some World War II hero but it doesn't really matter. The street is the street, and changing the name of the street is just kind of not our policy, or not my policy. I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I bet I can't support this. I move to deny.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny item 7. Cast your votes.
Can I speak first? Reading through the qualifications, one, I feel like we do meet most of it, but I provided an exhibit with the application that showed the properties that are owned and operated by Old Surety Life Insurance, who's making this request. We own and operate 5 of the 6 properties that use this street as a frontage. There's only one other property, and we're friendly neighbors with them and have, gotten their approval with this. So I guess I would just like a little bit more explanation as to, this small of a street that's not affecting any other property owners besides ourselves, and obviously, we're willing to absorb this, why it wouldn't be approved.
And I saw that in the application, and I really do appreciate what you're saying, but it's just changing the street name is something that I don't prefer to do unless in extraordinary circumstances, just in general, and I would be reluctant to set a precedent on any example to change a street name. That's my own personal opinion, but I've moved to deny it as seconded.
In addition, Mr. Chairman, the
Yes.
council has adopted a policy consistent with ours, and I don't see that this meets the criteria.
Well, we'd otherwise be inundated with people saying, well, I think I'd like a new name for my street. And it's a significant bar to get a street changed. Martin Luther King, for example, well, national prominence, national impact, that is something that obviously we've approved. But just to do it, a very notable young man, I agree, but not of citywide or national significance. We have a motion and a second. Commissioners, cast your votes. And it is denied. Thank you.
Item 8 is DA 23856, an application by the City of Oklahoma City for Maps 3 to obtain a lot split on 1021 South Rockwell Avenue.
Yes, Robbie Williams, Triad Design Group, 3020 Northwest 149th Street. We have I have a handout for you. We have a change in the property that the city's acquiring for the trail, so if I can hand that.
Okay.
Oh, they actually got it on the computer. The first map is the, in yellow, from Meridian to Council is the trail that is our project. The other trails from Overholser to Council, and then this portion is from Council to Meridian that will connect to the Oklahoma Trail. So you can go to the next slide. The area in question is between Council and Rockwell, and the city has met with the property owner, and they are now going to take the back part of the lot, the entire lot, and not intersect the lot. So we believe everything still applies in the staff recommendation, item 1, but item 2, we don't believe the deeds must reflect acknowledgement of the access easement.
Yeah.
I believe that was for the property owner, since we were bisecting their property to have access from the east side to the west side.
No protesting, Mr. Chairman. I move approve.
Well, there's a variance T number 1.
I move to move the variance on T number 1.
Second. A motion is second to approve the variance. Cast your votes. Variance is approved.
Thank you.
Wait, on the application, we're not done.
Now move the application deleting TE2.
Wait a minute, do we want to delete TE2? Is that seems to me that's their legal requirement, Dan, that we
But
keep
they
that.
take in the property.
They're moving it.
By taking the property, you don't need the easement.
They're taking ownership of that property now.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks.
Move approval of the application denying T number 2.
Okay, deleting T.
Deleting the T number 2.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve item 8, deleting T number 2. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Thank you.
Item 9 is ABC 794, an application by Main Event Entertainment for an ABC2 alcohol consumption overlaying C3 Community Commercial at 1441 West Memorial Road in Ward 8.
All right. I'm Adam Smith with Foremark from Dallas, Texas. We're here on behalf of Main Event Family Entertainment to seek your approval on a ABC2 overlay for our use for service of alcohol. As you can see on the photo that you all have on the screen up there, our site is adjacent to Pawnee Drive as well as Memorial, as well as close to John Kilpatrick Turnpike. We worked with Nick Gales as well as JJ on our floor plan to dedicate to the areas where exactly we would actually be serving alcohol and where we would not be serving alcohol, and pared that down from a 58,000 square foot building down to the plan that y'all probably have in front of y'all. Obviously, that's what we're here for today, is to seek the approval of that. And we also have someone as well from the Homeowners Association that we met with prior to this meeting about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Teresa as well, who also wanted to speak about this project as well.
Where is the alcohol service limited to? I'm not sure how I can tell from what I'm looking at, because I've got a fairly small rendering and a staff report. So,
Is y'all's rendering not colored?
I'm sorry?
Is your rendering not colored? No, it's great. Okay.
It's great.
To explain verbally, we've got one right here that shows it pretty well. Essentially, the areas right here, which are the bowling lanes on the far right side of your drawing.
Right.
Obviously, we're not going to serve alcohol on those. There's also there's a laser tag arena just to the north of that. At the top side, that's also not shaded in here, and it's also not where we're going to serve alcohol, as well as this corridor and these back rooms, these maintenance rooms back here. In addition to the restrooms, a majority of the kitchen, which is right here, in addition to additional offices and spaces through this corridor right here. As a result, the alcohol sales will be, obviously, potentially, you could be served alcohol in about approximately 29,000 square feet of this overall floor plan. But basically, those are the main areas where you're not going to be able to have alcohol.
Okay, so while you're holding that up so I can see it, the area that's colored maybe orange or red, there's obviously table service, and it's the bowling lanes, or not the lanes themselves, but...
Right.
And then the area that's colored in yellow as well?
So the yellow and orange are areas where you could potentially have alcohol, I guess, in your hand if you were drinking it. But, obviously in the game room, we're not necessarily serving it out there. You could potentially be walking through it. So basically this shaded area where all the games are, that's you could be walking with it, but we're not necessarily serving it to you there. There are tables along here as well as here, and then dining in a bar, obviously, that's right here. And that's where you're typically being served at. But there are waitresses and waitress that can take, your orders while you're sitting down and bowling.
Thank you. Nick, would you?
Well, I would point out the entire billiard area will not have service, but you could carry a beer and play billiards.
Thank you. Just help me understand. I didn't have a...
No, it's okay. Sorry.
When we first saw this application, it was for the entire area, and there were some access issues on Pawnee that they have addressed. I believe there's a lady that'd like to speak, so let's hear from her. While she's coming up, this site's already zoned. They're not required to plat it, but they want to plat it, so that's why we have a plat in the next application, and obviously they're making an ABC request.
Yeah, I've talked to some of the neighbors, so I was aware of that part of the process. Oh, if you would pull that microphone down and give us your name and address, please.
Is this okay?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
I'm Teresa Sherrill. I live at 1356 Northwest 138th, Bradford Gardens. And I'm 4 houses from the proposed main event entertainment building site. The HOA board for the neighborhood is not opposed in any way to having main event in our area, but we would like the Planning Commission to know that we are extremely concerned about the additional traffic created by this business that will be going through Northwest 138th. One of the business's proposed entry exits is on Pawnee Drive, and that becomes Northwest 138th, which is the majority of the neighborhood. We've had positive talks with main event engineers and plannings, and we discussed with them various ways to discourage their customers from going through our neighborhood. A no right turn sign at Pawnee exit and at their Pawnee exit, and moving that same exit further south away from the west entry to our neighborhood were a couple of ideas. And I think that's been arranged in their plans at this point in time, so we're very excited about that. Obviously, the most desirable solution would be to have both the businesses' entries and exits accesses on Memorial Drive. We're not sure that can be done, I guess for fire reasons from what's been explained to me. But if there are any possible ways to discourage main events customers from utilizing Northwest 138th as their route when they leave the business, we'd really appreciate the city approving those in the planning process. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you for coming down. I'm not sure that even if you had limited access on Pawnee Drive, it would make any difference, because I live north of you, for example, and if I were there and wanted to go home and I had to go out on Memorial Drive, I'd go out on Memorial Drive, make a right-hand turn, which would be the only thing I could do because it's a westbound street, and make an immediate right-hand turn on Pawnee and go up to my neighborhood. And people, I'm afraid, are going to do that regardless of what happens. And the fact that they're discouraging traffic, and I see the way they've done the Bullard and so forth to direct traffic coming in on Pawnee back down to Memorial. And I hope that discourages some traffic through the neighborhood. I'm frankly not sure that it's going to do a lot, and I don't think there's anything more we can ask of the applicant.
But thank you for listening.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for being here. Commissioners, any other discussion? This is actually the ABC application.
Move approval of the application.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 9. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Item 10 is C6535. This is the final plat of Main Event Edition.
we're up here again for the same project, Main Event. We've got our civil engineer as well with us, Matt Moore, obviously with Matt Claymore Engineering. This is part of the process that we were talking about that Teresa mentioned was the access to Pawnee. I know this may or may not have bearing on the plat, but obviously it is worth mentioning that we, as part of that process, to ensure that the entrance there would try to deter customers from going down Pawnee into their neighborhood. There's also going to be an additional sign there as well at that entrance as you're leaving our site that says don't take a right turn. So hopefully that will also be an additional deterrent as well, and that was something that we all thought would be a good workaround for that. But as for the plat itself, obviously it's an unplatted site. We're here today to plat that, and if y'all have any concerns with that, we would love to address them.
Well, I thank you for meeting with the neighborhood and doing what you could to moderate the impacts that you would have.
Mr. Chairman, that was my concern when I looked at it, was the impact of the traffic going back through that community. But after he was explaining, even if they would go out on Memorial Road on both access points, if you were living back to the northeast, I think you still would go back around. The only thing that would solve that is they close Pawnee at the subdivision point and put a cul-de-sac there where they couldn't even go through at all. That would be the only solution to keep them out.
And frankly, I'm not sure the neighbors
I'm just saying
anywhere but 138th Street would care about that. And there are a lot of people in that neighborhood going north from that street. So,
Mr. Chairman, if you'll recall, a couple, 3 years ago, we had a similar discussion about that, and was exactly the position of the neighborhood. One thing that will, I believe, help this somewhat is, I won't say necessarily the near future, but in the future, Pawnee is to be signalized at Memorial. And that could help.
Janice, you had something?
Yeah, I'm not sure that closing it off in a cul-de-sac would be the only option. It seems to me like this might be a good place to try some kind of traffic calming where you narrow the street and put, partial bump outs. There are different names for them. Are those what chicanes are? Is that something different? Where you really visually sort of deter traffic, you don't actually close the street off. And I think this would be an ideal place to try something like that, just to discourage it so that it just doesn't look like some place you should drive. It's like, oh, that's a neighborhood, we don't want to go that way. I mean, it may very well not discourage a determined cut-through driver.
Such as me.
Such as you. But we all know you drive way under the speed limit, and so you know.
Way under.
Contribution to the problem. So, I hate to see a commercial site like this, although nothing to do with your proposal. I think it sounds great, but especially 29,000 square feet of alcohol service, I just hate to see it having this kind of access into a neighborhood that is so close by. I really would like to see some exploration of that possibility.
Well, a couple of things I'll point out. One, traffic calming, that's not our call, that's Traffic Commission's call. Pawnee is a platted street, and it's a collector street for that neighborhood. Between Pawnee and 138th, you join two major arterials, Western and Memorial. That said, the chairman and his driving habits may or may not come into play. If he want to defeat something, he could defeat the traffic calming devices also. This is frankly a plat on something that is already zoned that doesn't need to be platted. It's being platted by the applicant because they want it platted for their legal consideration. They don't need to plat this to build that building to go get a permit. They didn't need to work with us on trying to direct the traffic to the south on Pawnee. If, and it is not possible because of the topography, but if it were possible to take all the access off of Memorial, and the chairman wanted to leave, we would still go out on Memorial, take a right on Pawnee, and go home. We'd make the right off of Memorial instead of right out of the driveway on the Pawnee.
Well, and I'm not debating with you. I realize I'm saying I wouldn't think that closing it off would be a good solution here. It's not necessarily that I'm advocating for that. And if you don't think this is the appropriate place for something like that, or we don't have the appropriate application in front of us to try to adventure into the great world of traffic calming, and I understand that, but this seems to me like a difficult thing to be putting so close to a neighborhood.
Well, again, it's zoned straight C3 on Memorial Road. What would you like there?
Maybe not 29,000 square feet of alcohol service. I mean,
That's not what's before us.
Yeah.
Before us is a plat.
And traffic calming, if it were to be considered, would be taken up at the Traffic Commission. That's where that process belongs in terms of how Oklahoma City functions.
I think Janice makes a valid point, though, because with the number of people that's coming out and that much alcohol and the activity, that's a straightaway. I mean, maybe it needs to be taken up with traffic, but it is a potential added situation, I think, that needs some kind of addressing, because it's a drag strip. I mean, it's a straight run, and it's just wide open, and it's a lot of houses dumping out onto Pawnee, so.
It's clearly an issue, but
Yeah.
not,
Maybe the traffic needs to
it's
look
a
at it. I'm
traffic
just putting that out.
commission issue and not ours.
Yeah.
Any other discussion about the plat?
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 10. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11 has been continued until December the 12th. Item 12 is PUD 1511, application by Shaz Investment Group to rezone 13601 Southwestern Avenue from AA agricultural to PUD 1511, Ward 5.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is a part of an overall plan on a piece of property that the commission is now very much cognizant of. This is the commercial portion. Initially, when we filed a PUD back in, I believe in 2012, the entire 140-plus acres were included, the commercial, the portion to the west of the commercial, and then the single family. The single family was broken off as a separate PUD, and you can see the platted lines drawn within PUD 1480. This is the commercial portion, and one question was asked of me, explain the changes from the commercial portion as it is now compared to what it was, say, back in February. So, looking at the changes, we have taken out, or we've matched the uses that were here on the commercial portion back in February, except that we've added two, that being the facilities for dependent and neglected children and facilities for drug or alcohol treatment. Staff has asked for a technical evaluation making those special permit uses, which would mean we'd have to come back for approval to this board, which we are in agreement with. We've taken out the non-accessory signs. We've taken out the senior independent living that was previously in the application. So the short answer is we match the uses, except that we've taken a few out that we think the commission probably wouldn't have looked at favorably, and we've added the two with the condition that those are special permit, which we are in agreement with. Now on to signage. We are requesting 15-foot signs. I think initially back in February we were somewhere north of 25. Additionally, back in February we had a EMD sign that we had proposed to be an accessory sign. We have since taken out any ability to do an EMD sign. So no EMD sign, no non-accessory sign. There is a TE that deals with the signage, and because this is really split into two separate commercial tracts, what we'd like to do is have limit the southern tract to one 15-foot tall sign, and the northern tract, because of the amount of right-of-way and frontage that we have there, allow two 15-foot signs. There would be monument signs, but two of them, so we'd have a total of three accessory signs to allow for the development of that commercial. Some of the other TEs, we are in agreement with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On number 6, on the screening, we're in agreement with it, but on the masonry columns, rather than 24-foot centers, we'd ask for 50-foot centers because it'll be behind our building. It's not going to be something that'll be out on the frontage. So we'd like 50-foot centers, which will match what they'll serve as the backyard for some of the residential houses, and that's essentially what we have within the R1 PUD of 1480. It essentially works out every lot line. So it would be able to match that, but we're fine with that if we can get to the 50-foot centers. Number 7, we're fine with. Number 8, we're fine with. Number 9 is the signage that I addressed. And number 10, we're fine with, but I do want to make a clarification to the way the TE is written. The way the TE is written, it says all improvements as described in the conclusion section. Part of the conclusion section outlines A and B, which we're fine with. We understand that's our responsibility when the commercial develops. Part of what the conclusions also says, it makes recommendations that the city install infrastructure. So I certainly don't think I have the ability to agree to TE number 10 requiring the city to produce some infrastructure, and I'm not sure that I want to make sure that the commission understood what the conclusions really said. So as far as it requires us to do A and B, we're in agreement with. As far as it requires us to say, yes, the city has to go do these other things, we have no authority to do that. So I wanted to make note of that. So with that, any questions?
David, tell me where in the PUD we have 50-foot centers on site-proof screening. I just missed that when you explained it.
No, we don't. In PUD 1480, we require certain portions to have brick columns. In this, we didn't have any. There's a TE adding that requirement, which we would agree to the requirement, but we'd like 50-foot centers rather than 24-foot centers because it'll be behind our development.
But you'll be backing up to people's houses, too.
Yeah, it'll serve as their backyard, and like I said, that'll be comparable to what the backyards in PUD 1480 will have. In fact, I think it might even be more. I think it might be 75 feet in 1480.
That's what I was trying to find out. Okay, thank you.
And I do see that there was one protest individual that signed up, and I do want to just address that real briefly. The individual to the north is it's a PUD 867, and I looked at that to see what it allows, and it allows straight C3 zoning. It has no limitations on use like we have, and it allows 25-foot signs, so signs that are taller than ours, as well as uses that are far more intense. Additionally, we require that all structures have at least 70% brick, and we have to come back for a specific plan.
Any additional questions of David before we hear the protester?
I got a couple of questions, just to be so I'm clear. As I look at the diagram on the overall development, this one right here, right? So the C3 here will butt hard up against Track 2, which is residential. Is that right? Am I reading that right, Dave?
You're reading that right, but what you're seeing is an old site plan, and why that is included, the land west of the subject tract here is not before the commission, but it was asked, can you at least show us what your plan is? And this is what our last plan showed. It'll be a combination of R1ZL and possibly some R2. What we agreed to back in 1480 was we would remove all multifamily, but it was asked, can you at least show us what you got?
Okay, but at any point, that's residential, and so we have then all of your C3 uses then will be butt up right next against this residential uses, right?
Correct.
And so then that which would include driving, eating establishments, fast food, which sounds like a Sonic on 23rd Street to me, with drive-through order window. And then light public and protection and utility may not be an issue. But then I get down to outdoor sales and display, but there's a caveat then, it seems to me, in the following uses shall be subject to said use in the C3 districts, which is outdoor sales and display, blah, 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 which is basically TE4, right?
Yes.
I just don't know what that tells me.
Here's the only reason I add the asterisk on the outdoor sales. We don't want it as a separate use unit, but what my client wants to ensure is that if there's a retail or a gasoline store, that they're able to have outdoor display like we all are accustomed to seeing. So I didn't want, by taking the use unit out, to indicate that we don't, if there was retail, they could have some sort of sidewalk display of product. But as a separate use unit, it's removed.
I mean 7-Eleven with firewood or something.
Well, it's listed in the permitted uses section. That's perhaps, maybe it's a presentation, but I'm suspicious.
Well, there's nothing to be suspicious of.
It doesn't sound to me like it's deleted at all, is my point.
In the staff report, in the uses, there's an asterisk, and if you go to the bottom of the page, on the asterisk it reads, "This use is limited to retail or gasoline sales within the PUD, not a separate use unit."
Yeah. Outdoor sales and display is a conditional use in C3, and RTE makes it clear that he will meet the conditions for that use in C3.
Okay.
Which is basically, it's limited to the sidewalk in front of the store, or behind the front wall is like a garden center, something like that.
Okay, good clarification for me. All right, but still, let's go back then up to some of the other uses, though. I'm become more and more sensitive to drive-through order windows that are hard up against residential. It's a use that is intrusive. And I didn't also see anything about your, and perhaps I missed it, was your lighting plan up against that residential? That I didn't see that mentioned in the...
Commercial lighting will require by code that we don't have any spillover and has to be directed away from residential. That's a code requirement.
So is that 14 feet, Jay?
We know how well that works.
Jay? Is it aren't those...
I don't recall that there's any specific height requirements, but there are specific requirements in the code about spillover light and certain light candles that have to be met at the property line.
But we don't have a height restriction. I'm concerned if you don't have a height restriction, you have more spillover than our code gets to, frankly.
That'll be part of the specific plan that this body will get to look at.
But if I don't have it in the PUD, I don't think I'm going to get it in the specific plan. I just don't.
Well, this discussion, Mr. Chairman, Mike, gets to the point of my analysis of this application. It's been a long time that we've seen an application for a PUD that has square boxes without any idea where the connectivity is with the neighborhood. You've got R1 over, where connectivity is. You've got 44 uses of all manner of things that go on in this thing with residential right to the west of you. And so it's a blank slate. There's not any kind of plan at all. And I think one time, Jim, you said, isn't this a planned unit development? Where the plan is, I can do 44 uses with just a box here with no idea about ingress, egress, connectivity, anyway about how you preserve the neighborhood to the west or how you deal with the streetscapes or how you do anything. And then you're saying in your application that we're not going to know that until you get together with a specific plan. And I think that what we've always assumed is that the specific plan is consistent with the plan that you came in with here before this committee, that here's our plan, and then you do a specific plan to show that you conform to it. And this is just years backwards, and I haven't seen this kind of application come in a long, long time, and I think this is what Commissioner Hensley is, what are you doing? Where is it? Where's the protection? Where's the stuff? And we're negotiating it. We're not negotiating. You're asking where is it? And that's my objection to this. And I think that not that I'm going to deny it, but I think that you need a lot of work on this before I'd ever vote on it. This is absolutely up in the air. Who knows what you're going to do with it, except that 44 uses and boxes.
Well, I think your characterization of the process is not the way it works. The PUD handles the zoning and the uses. The specific plan, by its definition, handles the specifics.
But we always have had plans. I mean,
What's that?
I just key on Jim's comment. Where's the plan in this thing? We always key on the plan. You come in, this is what we propose to do, and how we're going to put this together with all the amenities and protections of neighbors, and et cetera, in compliance with what it is that we want to see a commercial development to be. This is just, I can do whatever I want to do, and I don't care.
Well, it's not that, because you're required to do a certain percentage of brick. We have access taken care of. There's a major boulevard entrance into the neighborhood that will also funnel off of this. We allow cross-access amongst everything.
But I'd like to see that, David.
And you will at the specific plan stage. And that's what the
I'm not going to
specific
get a blank check, though. That's my whole point. That's really what I'm seeing here, and it concerns me that it's like, okay, go ahead and do what you want to do, and then the specific plan, what do we do with that? We have a whole other hearing that we don't like this, and this, because you could have prevented that from happening by coming in here with an application that at least has a conceptual idea of the positions of the building, how you're going to deal with guidelines about, the backs of buildings, et cetera. This is, I don't know, there's just a lot here that is, I have no idea.
I think from a developer standpoint, it's why do we have a specific plan process? If that's flawed, then if we didn't have that process, then all the PUDs would have to show you. But if we have the specific plan process, that's where this commission gets to say, we do like this or we don't. But the protections we put in.
Let's hear from Nick. He's got something he wants to...
Well, you got ahead of me. I'm going back to Commissioner Hensley's concerns about what's on the west. We have two items in our staff report. The one Commissioner Hensley held up that shows that the property immediately west of this is zoned R1ZL.
It's not.
What's up there is zoned AA.
Right.
I'm assuming that is the correct zoning right now?
Yes.
That property has not been rezoned?
That's correct.
So there is no screening requirement for AA, basically.
We're putting it into this PUD that we are.
Well, I know.
required to
You're saying you're going to build the fence with 50-foot centers and all that. I understand that. But then you're going to come in on an after-the-fact basis and try to rezone that R1, and that makes it kind of look like an end run, if you will. Right now, I would technically say you don't need any screen, except a barbed wire fence to keep the cattle on one side.
Well, we're looking in pieces, it seems to me, and I said this to David when he called me, that we're going to get back what we denied just one piece at a time.
Now going back to Commissioner Wright's point and the plan, I believe I agree with both of you on that. Yeah, we have a shot at the specific plan stage to say we like or do not like something. But we need to know what it is going forward before we see that specific plan. The PUDs that we're accustomed to seeing don't have the finite specific plan attached to them, but they have enough detail to tell us what we're going to see. And I believe that's Commissioner Bright's point, and I think that's a valid point. I think, technically you're both probably have merit, but if you handed us a specific plan tomorrow and we approve this today, how would we know if the specific plan is consistent with what we approved? Well, it would have to be because
there's nothing proposed.
Because there's nothing here to compare it to.
Yeah, and I would expect...
And that's Commissioner Bright's position, and I agree with that position.
Well, and what we get when we get a specific plan is the language in the specific plan from the staff which says this specific plan meets the conditions imposed in the PUD.
Right.
And if we're not imposing any conditions, we don't need a specific plan because there's nothing it's got to match to.
Well, yeah, I can't support this because, one, just the several points, 2 or 3 points that I raised. One is, I get the outdoor storage and my failure to read the staff report fully on that. But I would expect some enhanced landscaping up against this residential, and I would expect the PUD to say that. I would expect, I get that we'll meet the ordinance on the lights, but I would like a little more clarity on that as it's hard up against, it's going to be, potentially, may not be now, but I think that's the natural progression. It makes sense to me. I would expect that we have fewer uses than what we've got, specifically those that are intrusive to R1 neighborhoods, such as drive-through windows. We all have that history.
And to that issue, we faced the same thing when we zoned the track for OnCue, and the big problem was the drive-through window. And what we've seen is all the neighbors that were upset with the fact that that was going to come in, one by one called the CEO to say, I was wrong, it has no impact. So I don't think it has the impact that some people might think it has. I think when you look at this, we meet the comp plan, it's a major activity corridor, and that's what we did with these uses. These are the uses consistent with what the comp plan and major activity corridors call for.
Well, I move to deny then. I mean, if we're going to hear it.
Second.
You know, we can get a continuance if you'd like to work on it a little bit. It's up to your client, Dad. I mean, you know, it's...
What is your position on that?
Our goal was, because we got no pushback on the commercial from this commission way back in February. I think there were even comments made that there weren't problems with the commercial. It was the density of the residential. We just matched what we had back in February. So I think it's consistent with what this commission has seen for about a year.
I think what probably happened is we didn't focus on the commercial because we were going to deny the application, so we didn't even get into it.
Let me be more specific. Regardless of whether we would or wouldn't have done more, the flavor I'm sensing here is that if the application goes forward today, it's probably not going to be a favorable outcome. Conversely, with a little more work and some additional detail and a continuance, I believe we would have approved this. And so now I'll be more specific. Do you want to go forward with this application today, or would you like to continue it?
I think I'd like to go forward, because let me explain why. Giving more detail, my client is not going to develop this commercially. So they can't show you what buildings are going to look like until they have an end user. So it makes it difficult at this stage to tell you this is what the building will look like and here's how it'll sit. That's why we have the specific plan phase, and that's why we also have an element to waive the specific plan if you show the appropriate detail in a PUD.
But the PUD process is designed to give us some conceptual information to begin with as to what we might expect to find.
So it kind of
and it's not just wide open C3 zoning, which is in effect.
And some enhanced portions. We're looking for some enhancement here. I mean, I get, and I'm not asking, to be clear, my ask is not necessarily that you show me exactly what's going to go there, et cetera, and I don't think that's the case. I understand the speculative nature of development. But I also understand that we want to protect the residential that we feel is coming, that is going to be hard up against this, and that there are measures that can be placed into this PUD that takes that into account. And I don't sense those in this application. That's my point.
And maybe that'll help my decision. What are the specifics?
We're not going to negotiate from the horseshoe because we spent enough time on a blank PUD today. That's not why we're here. If you want to work on it, fine. If you want to take what
I'm happy to talk.
Present says,
talk. I'll tell you my thoughts on it if you'd like to hear.
I mean, you have to talk to you individually or some, outside the horseshoe, but not take up the public's time negotiating from here.
Can I move this to at least give my client a call to see what they'd like to do?
Well, if you want to kick it to the hill of the docket, we'll take you up again there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, David.
Just going to...
Item 14.
All right. Item 13 has been continued until December the 12th. Item 14 is C-6522. This is the preliminary plat of Cottonwood Creek in Ward 3.
I know you signed up on this item. Well, sit with us. We're going to take it up again. He's either going to come back and accept a continuance, or we're going to vote on it. So he wants to contact his client. Sorry, go ahead.
So we are on item 14, which is Cottonwood Creek.
Commissioners, my name is Brian Estes with KBGE. We're at 105 West Riverside, Austin, Texas. We've delayed this twice already, so I think today is finally the day we're going to hear this project. I believe we have 10 or 11 TEs, all of which apply to final plat except for item number 2, which is block length. I'll ask you all to look at that real quick, and you see we've added a traffic circle up there at what was called Emma's Loop and then Southwest 22nd Street. And if you look over at this exhibit, we're going to go ahead and add another traffic circle at Hayden Drive where it hits Southwest 22nd. Commissioner Powers, you mentioned traffic calming, and traffic circles are a fantastic way of doing that. Got an exhibit over here showing what one looks like, and I think you can probably see we've got the dimensions on it, and we also have a picture of one in an urban area. So, okay, great. Can I answer any other questions?
We also know you can't get that without the Public Works Director's approval. And I'm not sure, again, exactly where the traffic circles are going to go. I can't see whatever you've got over there.
Okay, I'll bring it closer.
Thank you. If you could point it out for me, that would help.
We're talking about a traffic circle here, and then we added one here as well.
Now show us.
We've added it. We've got the one here, the big over there. We got one back here. And that breaks up our block length to address the block length variance.
I think I'd want to know if the Public Works Director is going to approve the traffic circles before I approve the block lengths. I don't know how anyone else feels.
This preliminary, can we condition it?
Yeah.
We don't look at those in detail in preliminary plat stage, but we do look in the final plat
Right.
stage.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to make the point that it's taken up and considered in the TEs at this stage, that if we do approve the variance, that be contained in the variance language.
yeah, it will have to meet our standard, and this is something a little bit new from our consideration also. So we are looking at it on an individual basis because, depending on the legs and the individual setting, you might have different requirements. So, but we look at in the final plat stage, and before the final plat, we have detailed plans that's reviewed. So if you would like to make that
I mean, I
point,
think traffic circles work, so.
yes.
So if, that would be language I would add to the variance language if we were to approve it. Other discussion, Commissioners, we do have some folks signed up, obviously.
I just have one question about the plat itself. Along the boundary along 22nd Street where it backs up to the existing residences,
Yes, sir.
you're just butting backyard to backyard and sticking up a blockade fence, basically.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion before we hear from the protesters?
Looking at this plat, there's a possibility of 212 cars coming out of that subdivision and going into it. And
I would like to hear from the fire department if they're okay with this thing just having one entrance. That's a lot of traffic in a subdivision with only one entrance. I think the emergency part of that thing we need to seriously consider.
Excuse me if I may, Commissioner Allen, we have 2 access points. We have, up off Paisley Road.
I see it in the other addition. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I did not see that the line was drawn across it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Amy Swank?
Amy Swank, Groves and Associates, 3601 North Classen. Represent the Westbury neighborhood, which is indicated, I believe that's going to be to the north of your description. Several of the neighbors, while we're not going to have them speak and take up your time, have shown up, and I'd just like those neighbors to go ahead and stand up.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of the major problems with the proposed plat, if you're looking at your diagram, you have the outline, which is Mustang Creek, which is coming up very close to a budding Mustang Creek. If you follow the red dashed line, that's the proposed border of the plat. The blue line coming across is Mustang Creek, and then it comes back in and loops around. One of the main reasons, and as I'm sure you're all aware, this area that they're proposing to build on used to be a holes, I believe, 1 and 9 of a golf course. One of the reasons this area probably was a golf course is it's in a floodway and in a flood plain. And one of the neighbors will get up and give you a brief overview of the flooding issues that exist out there currently without any development. The Southwest Sector Plan has certain aspects of trying to protect areas that are in floodways or floodplains. They suggest one thing is to try and keep the natural environment undisturbed so that when you have the additional one, it'll slow down your water getting into the streams, which will cut down the speed of your flow. It also acts as a natural ability to clean the water, which in this particular circumstance is something we need to consider because Mustang Creek, and when you look at your Southwest Sector Plan, you're going to see that it is one of only 8 bodies of water which are classified as contaminated. The proposed plan, as you can see, is going to take out the vast majority of the ability of the water to be naturally cleansed, or even so much as slowed down. In addition, of course, when you have this much development, you're going to end up with a lot more water flowing into the creek. The Southwest Sector Plan, which is a document which should be followed by the Commission, does request and require that at least a 50-foot setback be maintained from any streams, banks, or a 100-year floodplain. And if you have both, it's whatever is going to give the greater protection, which this plat fails to do. It also recommends to maintain the natural appearance and to leave as much of the natural area that's located in those areas, which again this plat fails to do. The Southwest Sector Plan also had proposed an extensive trail system,
which many of those trails were going to be adjoining in this area, basically the thought being that they were going to use the creek system as a basis of some of the trails, which based on the location of the extent of houses which are proposed in this plat would basically eliminate the ability of a trail system, and there is no proposed trail system within the plat. We would also request that there's 2 other sections within this that are zoned not R1 currently, and we would ask that that be required to be zoned prior to going forward with the plat. What you're going to see when the representative for the neighborhood comes up and does the PowerPoint presentation is this area is already very prone towards flooding. Southwest Sector Plan, I think, is aware of, and has tried to take that into account and put up protections. One of the fears is, you know, if you allow those protections to be set aside in this, when you go and you start developing further down and you just keep a ball rolling of setting it aside, and inevitably the whole purpose of the plans and the protections that they have set up become of absolutely no effect. So while we think this area could theoretically be developed, the proposed plat is not, in our opinion, the way of doing it. I would also ask if the plat is currently reflective of enough spacing for the traffic circles, because while I don't know the actual dimensions that are required on traffic circles, if they're not, I don't know how much the plat would have to change. I would also indicate that currently the staff isn't requiring detention for this particular plat. And I think you're going to see when you see the PowerPoint presentation that and when you look at the layout of the plat currently, if there is a requirement for detention once this plat is approved and developed, I personally don't see any location where the detention could go in, and then the required detention would fall upon the neighbors, and they would be incurring that expense. The likelihood of that ever happening and that detention ever going in would be very slight, which then is just going to continue a problem. It's going to be increased as opposed to decreased. This area could be developed, but not with this plat the way it's done. Thank you.
Before you sit down, I thought I understood you to say that there were areas that are not zoned residentially that you thought we should require to be rezoned.
Yes.
Tell me where it is you're talking about.
Well, part of it is going to be, I'm sorry, I don't have that particular mapping in front of me. My understanding is, my eyesight is not the best. It's something looped that's written up there. It's up near that section is where the clubhouse would have been. So,
I believe T4 addresses that.
Thank you.
Did you get, I'm sorry, I didn't have that immediately for you.
Any questions of Ms. Swank?
This area. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Marty Lawson?
Oh, and yes, okay. Thank you, JJ.
Good afternoon. My name's Marty Lawson. I live at 2113 Edinburgh. I am a resident in the Westbury Addition. And let me grab this clicker and I'll get you started here.
Tell me how long this is before you start.
I think we can do this in probably around about 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, if that's okay.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's go ahead and get started. This first slide here, I'm just going to lay out the area for you. Where you see the hand in the picture is the area that is Cottonwood Creek, or a portion of it. Morgan Road, of course, to our right, Southwest 15th to the top, 29th to the bottom, and Sarah Road below that. This picture here is a picture of the Cottonwood Creek area. It's in the floodplain zone area that you saw on the map, colored in blue. And our neighbors had brought together all these pictures, so what you're going to see is just things that the neighborhood had brought together. Now, this particular one, as you can see, just demonstrates that that's not just a blue spot on the map. It really is a place where water comes in. This next area that I'm going to show you is between the two hands, and the hand to the right, near the blue flood area, is the Westbury Clubhouse, and to the left is the banks of one of the creeks that come through there. And I want to demonstrate here what it looks like when the water comes out of that creek and up towards the clubhouse. So this is what it looks like now without any flooding. This is what it looks like with the flooding. And this is just another view looking towards the Thornberry addition. So as you can see, that's quite a ways that water comes up out of its banks and heads up towards the clubhouse. Now this particular picture, in that bend right there, is going to be near the number 11 green. And this is what it looks like without flooding. And there is actually two creeks where the hands are showing that it snakes around there, as you saw that loop before. This is a picture during the flooding. And this bridge where the rails are you seeing is about 10 feet from the bottom of the creek up to the rails. So this is what it looks like as the water continues to come up. It's completely up over that bridge rail. And now this is the picture from the neighbor's house where it's rising even further and starting now to come into their backyard. Or in fact, it is in their backyard and approaching their house. This is the same area, only from a different angle. This is the house to the north of that location. As you can see, the creeks are back in there and the trail runs back in towards the bridge. And this is what it looks like whenever it's flooding. There's a substantial amount of water that's coming in these areas. Now this next location that I've got is in the back of 2113 Edinburgh Drive. That's my residence. And this is at the 13th tee box. So there's a picture of the backyard. The hand is showing you where the creek area. This is one of the more shallower creeks that finger up off of the larger ones. And this is what it looks like when it's flooding. And you might notice those swirls in there. That's not wind that's causing those swirls. There's actually a pretty substantial amount of flow that's running through that. Now this next area I'm going to take you is in front of my house. These are going to be some street pictures. And this is Edinburgh Drive, around about the 2100 block. The hand is pointing to some children that got the raft out of their dad's boat and are paddling around out there. But of other significance is just below that hand you see the rock mailbox. And just to give you a perspective, I stood next to the mailbox, and although I'm not a big man, but about like this is where the top of that mailbox would be. So you can see there's a substantial amount of water that's in that street. This is in the same area, right at the intersection. This is not uncommon for us to see sights of cars getting stuck in there and having to be pushed out. Okay, a few more slides here and we're going to be done. This is at the bridge going to the 13th green, and you'll note on the map that this is a pretty wide area of the creek. And this is a picture of the creek here. There again, this is a very deep creek, and that water is very treacherous. You would not want to get caught in that. It might be detrimental to your life, but we're all aware it's there, and it's been there for a long time, so we feel safe. But that creek, at that water level, that's probably about 8 foot deep right there. Up at the tree line up along there, I would say that's probably approaching around 15 feet. So it's, and the width of the creek right there, I'm going to say is approximately 30 to 40 feet wide. So that's a substantial amount of water that's pushing through here. And then we're going to go down now to the 15th green. This is going to be another bridge along this same area of water. And as you can see, it's very wide, it's very fast, it's very powerful. And this is the last slide that I have up here, Chairman, and this is simply to point out between the upper hand and the lower hand. The lower hand is Southwest 29th and Sarah Road. The upper hand is close to the addition, as you can see, and this is a road that frequently floods out. This summer, there was kind of an unusual rain, but it was actually closed by the city several times. But it's not unusual anytime anything other than a normal rain comes in that this is an area that you can get stuck in there because the water comes from that lower hand and it moves towards those creeks up there. And I'll wrap it up by just mentioning, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, is in the right side of that where you see the big blue area over there in that floodplain area, one of the biggest concerns that this neighborhood has is this flooding issue. This isn't something new. I mean, this has been known to happen for a long time in those areas that's to the right over by Morgan Road. If we just keep lifting the ground up, we don't feel like that makes the rain stop. It doesn't make the water quit flowing through there. If it's bottled up there, it has to come out somewhere else. And I understand that you know, people can look at that and we can say, well, we can raise the properties, but that's our concern. I mean, these are real pictures. They're happening frequently, and we don't want that water coming in our area. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Estes?
Indeed. I understand that the concerns with drainage, clearly. I mean, that's every engineer's, first thought on a project. We will meet the city requirements, this drainage criteria manual, and we'll meet FEMA requirements.
We hear flooding and drainage issues so often that I have to wonder if either we're letting people build where we shouldn't be letting people build, or our drainage ordinance needs to be reworked. I mean, it's...
Well, we rely on our public works people to figure that out for us. Obviously, this is one wild and woolly creek, no question. What troubles me about this plat is there is absolutely no protection for those 30-plus homes along Southwest 23rd Street. And that to me is troublesome. I think they may lose some lots, but could design this in such a way to protect those people. And there is no protection for them. Obviously, yes, the design is going to have to go around and fly with FEMA and everybody else, water flow, but and there will be more, obviously, more impervious material put in there, more water will go in the creek, but my primary concern is 23rd Street.
Commissioner, may I ask you, yes, protection for those lots along our boundary, protection from what?
Well, those people are sitting on, quote, golf course lots, if you will. They're looking out their back door at the golf course. Now I'm going to be looking out my back door at a picket or a stockade fence and a rooftop. Gee, does that make a difference to anybody? I don't know. It would to me. That's my concern.
Let me key on that. When I read through the application, and I know that the people in the audience that live in this area are quite concerned about the fact that the golf course that they moved into and lived by isn't perhaps going to be there anymore, which is, what do you do with an old golf course? Well, it's developed, and there's unfortunately no guarantee that that's going to continue on, and that's what you're encountering right now, and I really have sympathy for it, but I also have sympathy for developers that get, that they're going to develop this. But what Nick was saying is that the way that this development has been designed, in my opinion and in Nick's opinion, it showed no comfort or concern about those people that live along Southwest 23rd Street. Not that they're entitled to something, but it's a twofold issue here for me. One is that you've jammed up a whole lot of lots right there with a stockade fence and a rooftop, but also some of the protesters are talking about the preservation of the natural part of this golf course, which there was somebody wrote some sketches in where there's a lot of very, very old trees, an old tree stand. And when I saw the photographs of the protester about the golf course, nice rolling hills, nice large trees, etc., and what I see that this development is going to be is a clear cut. Just cut those down, put streets in, driveways, concrete slabs, and in addition to the flooding that might come from the rooftops and everything that goes into the creeks and who knows what this impact's going to be, but also you've really not paid much attention, in my opinion only, to the natural habitat, the natural landscaping, the natural tree lines that are in there. You could make a really nice development. I'm not saying you can't do it, because if it works, if the FEMA and the floodplain and all that works, well, then go for it. But to be insensitive to all of those property owners along Southwest 23rd Street and just jam up a zillion lots right there, some of which are lots that are on top of 75-year-old trees that are a nice canopy. I just think you need to just redo the thing and be sensitive towards what it is that, not that they have a right to a golf course. I wish you did, but you don't. But you have a right to have a development that's bedded up to you, that's sensitive to what your neighbor is. And this is one of those, good fences build good neighbors, or something like that.
And it's called responsible development. And we did look at trees, if you will. I've outlined some of the bigger trees, what I would consider 24 inches greater, are in these areas. The initial traffic circle we built was not just traffic calming, but that's to preserve a large tree. These trees in this area are all in the open space area. So what we've done is we've laid this out to try to save as many of these trees. Trees are in the middle.
But what about the trees over those?
I'm not done good.
You what?
I'm not done designing. I don't know.
Well,
I can't guarantee these are going to...
then why don't we see when you're done designing, why don't we see that and what it looks like, so that, because I don't, believe me, I don't discourage the development, and I don't think anybody, this is land, and it's land that's no more, it's no longer good for 18 hole or whatever it is. But if you would just kind of not tweak it, but really do some thoughts about how this could not be intrusive of those neighbors on 23rd Street and preservation of trees. And I think that with the looks of the land that I saw on these slides, you've got a really good opportunity to have a really nice development with detention, perhaps, or whatever that requires, or with driveway substances that absorb the water rather than let it run off. There's these materials that they make now that you can have absorbing things that don't let water run off of them, etc. I'm looking at a more sensitive, compatible development that would make these people at least be somewhat satisfied that that you guys are good neighbors and you've tried your best.
17% of our development is open space in common.
Well,
5 times what we're required to do.
no, I understand, but you can't because you're in the middle of a creek. So you see where I'm coming from. That's just my comment, and I mean that's
Coming in and wiping out all the trees is not our goal.
Pardon?
It's not our goal to come in and wipe out all the trees. We're going to do what we can to save as
and
many as we
also
can.
show sensitivity to the neighbors and all that. So I don't know where we go with this, but that's my comment.
I'm mindful of the fact, as part of our review, if I could, that property is currently zoned R1. It's zoned R4. And other than the golf, I'm assuming the only part of the C3 is, based on a quick sketch from JJ, is the clubhouse. So,
yeah, it's actually a triangular shape right off the clubhouse. But
right off, right,
yeah.
That little corner up there at the top. So, I mean, I am sensitive. I don't think that clearly there's no, other than a desire, I don't see anything driving this to a development other than R1. We're just here to approve the plat. Whether we like this particular plat or not. It's a bit of a challenging piece of property the way it lays out. I don't know, I'm sensitive to the concerns that Bob has met, but on the one hand, I see pictures of flooding. On the other hand, the storm sewer report says that they'll have to do a drainage study, that it's within the FEMA floodplain, so they'll have to establish the minimum floors, but I don't see any hard comment that it should not be approved as it's designed. It's a bit of a challenge. So, I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm sure there's some other people that may want to speak, but I don't know what. So, I don't know where.
Chris White, 3608 Sage Trail Circle, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I appreciate what you have to say, sir, because honestly, I think, and I appreciate what you have to say as well, because to me, we weren't responsible for shooting the gun and starting the land run, and Oklahoma got progressively less beautiful the more people that come. I mean, the bottom line is if that's not going to be a golf course, then, in an urban area, it's going to be developed, and so we're going to do the very best we can within the economics of doing a development to create something that maintains as many trees as possible. We'll have 9 common areas. 17% of our development will be common areas, 9 common areas. The developments around us with respect to whether it fits with what's around, there are no common areas that I'm aware of any significant size in the developments to the north or to the south immediately. And, we will do, everything we can. Most of and the pictures I lived in Westbury South for 10 years myself, and I understand that when heavy torrential rains come, sort of like, I'm pretty certain that most, if not all, of those photos that were shown were from that May 30th storm, or May 31st, which took the roof off my business as well. And many of them would have been. And so certainly, can we as developers or as a planning commission, we can no better affect those type of acts of God than we can stopping tornadoes. So we will do everything within the city ordinances and plans to be able to drain the water. So, we will do everything possible. I mean, there's going to be sidewalks. We'll have a playground up in the northeast area. And, when you think about how much our county is growing, are we first or second? You folks may know more than me. and as far as growing counties in Oklahoma, And, I recently read an article, the city putting a tremendous amount of money into Terex. And I think there was maybe 1,500 jobs and new folks moving in, median salary of around $40,000. Those folks got to have somewhere to live. And our development would be a prime opportunity. It'll be the nicest in its size range in the area. So,
I think basically what we're asking is to be sensitive to the neighbors and the conditions.
Oh, absolutely.
As you do develop, and like I said, I think that's what the overriding concern is.
absolutely. That's why we work to continue it for two times to try to give the golf course a shot, but obviously that wasn't.
Thank you. Commissioners? Abby, one more time, sure.
I just want to reiterate in terms of the Southwest Sector Plan. It does go through and specifically state that in accordance with the Southwest Sector Plan, the plat should maintain the floodplains in a natural or enhanced condition, which obviously this doesn't. Help preserve tree stands, which obviously this plat, if you take a close look at it and where the tree stands are and where the houses are going to go, the size lots that you're going to have, you're just not going to have. I mean, they may keep one or two trees, but when you're putting multiple lots in a tree stand, you're not going to preserve the tree stand. And to try to maintain natural appearance and use natural conditions for detention. If you go in and you wipe out the majority of tree stands, you go in and you build up as close as you possibly can to a creek bed, you are not going to have, by any stretch of the imagination, natural materials that are serving for any form of detention. So again, we're not suggesting this not be developed. We're just suggesting that the plat, as it is proposed and laid out, does not comply with the idea behind the Southwest Sector Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, discussion?
I find these kind of cases so difficult because, I mean, on the one hand, clearly there are serious issues out there with drainage. This is a piece of property that, there was a good reason why somebody made a golf course out of it. It was because it wasn't a good place to build houses, the terrain simply is not conducive to standard residential development. It's zoned R1. I think, what we're seeing here is pretty standard residential development. It doesn't seem to me to fit in this place. I'm not sure that what would be developed instead would fit there any better. So I feel very conflicted about what to do with this.
As do I. A couple of comments.
Come on. Well, just come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, because this is filmed and recorded. People can't hear you back there if they want to view it later.
Rocky Clark, 3615 Joshua Lane, Moore, Oklahoma. All these pictures and everything, we think it's gorgeous too. All the creek and everything flows southeast. We're northwest of this property, and those pictures are graphic and are scary, but it doesn't have anything to do with our development. The land we got, and we purposely stayed away from that, was the character of the land and the challenge to build on it. The land we've got, if you've ever been out there, in the front there's no trees. You go down to the west, there's very, very few trees, and we're trying to keep them all. And so at the end of the day, and the people that are complaining are way on the other side of us. They want their backyard, and they want the golf course, which I'd love to have a golf course as well. But we're not changing anything, and everybody's focusing on the pictures and the flooding. And if this lady's right, that's contaminated. If I had all my houses flooded, I'd be having somebody go check and make sure my kids are safe and stuff. But our land doesn't have anything to do with that. We're below them, we're to the north of them, and we're to the east of them. So if you could put those pictures back up, they don't show in comparison where our actual development is on the property of the golf course. And that's one of the concerns you have, saying you don't want to mess up the land, neither do we. But that's the only really place we thought we could put it without ruining any of the character of the land. So, and Nick, Councilman, you were talking about this side worrying about those people. We are too. And none of them are here, but the fact that they're not here doesn't change the fact that we want it to be as nice for them as anybody as well. So I just wanted to say, see the lay of the land and see what perception isn't always exactly what it is.
Thank you.
I believe this land is developed. It is zoned R1, like a good point, Janice. However, every drainage ditch in Oklahoma City is zoned R1. That doesn't mean we're going to build houses on it. What troubles me about this is what I've said before. There is no protection for the people on 23rd Street. The developer made comments that we're going to be as nice development for our size as there is. We're going to do it within the economics. We have 9 common areas. We have 9 common areas because we couldn't put lots there. They're in the floodplain. I really do believe this should be developed. I don't believe this plat, the way it's laid out, is the development that we should approve.
I'm pleased that we don't need that.
May I respond to that? I mean, honestly, if you look at the lay of those streets, I mean, you know, we have to move dirt to get areas that almost all the lots are in, that to raise them up to be out of the floodplain. So the common areas were designed specifically to be common areas because we wanted it to have a little character. We wanted it, you know, it's an odd-shaped piece of property, and so some of the common areas are just a result of the odd-shaped piece of property, and then we tried to put some curves and some appeal in the thing, and so there's where the common areas came to. We actually had more vanilla plans than this that put more lots than what you see on the piece of property. So, you know, honestly, there's a decent piece of R4 that we own as a part of this, and I would suppose that the best way to keep as many trees as possible would be to use the R4. You know, I mean, I don't really know for sure if we would, you know, if a relatively normal R1 plan isn't acceptable, then, you know, and we had to leave a lot of open space, then maybe that's what we might have to do.
R1 is not acceptable. I'm saying the way you have laid this R1 out is insensitive to the needs of your neighbors. You have roughly 40 houses backing up to 30, which coincidentally just meets that 75% requirement that he has. You're saying you're moving dirt, doing all these things. With that and some imagination, I think you could design a better design and protect these people. That's what I would encourage you to do.
Allow me to respond to that. I did the layout myself. And you're right. It does meet the regulations. That's why the code is written. And we're following the code word for word. I'm sorry that we can't, you know, appease everyone.
I'm not going to argue with you. That's not what we're here for. There's a difference in the meaning of can't and won't.
And I'm not sure all the Southwest sector standards are met, and that is a part of our master plan now. Those sector plans were adopted, incorporated into the master plan, and they are now the master plan. Somebody want to make a motion? We have a variance.
I'm going to make a motion to deny.
The variance first.
We don't need the variance if we're going to make a motion to deny, do we?
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny item 14. Cast your votes. Please, that's not necessary. We're not here for entertainment. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break. That's because everybody got up. Okay, we're back in session, and Russell, ready to go?
Go. All right. We are on item 15, C 6521, final plat of Colony Point Phase 4 in Ward 1.
Good afternoon. Chris Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers representing the developer. Have read the staff report and the TEs. Agree with all of them except number 3 and number 4. Number 3 has to do with a requirement for landscaping along Memorial Road, and number 4 has to do with the requirement for a sidewalk along Memorial Road. And I've talked with JJ, Mr. Chambliss, about that this morning. Memorial Road is currently a one-lane dirt road that basically goes to nowhere. It serves the farmer that plows the fields back there to the east and the oil field service road. But other than that, there's nothing there. So we'd like to delete those requirements, 3 and 4.
So when we pave Memorial Road, are you prepared to honor Ts 3 and 4?
Yes, whenever that happens, I'm sure we would.
Yeah. JJ, you wrote that down, didn't you? Okay, commissioners, no one has signed up.
I'll move approval, deleting 3 and 4.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 15, deleting TEs 3 and 4. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
Item 16 is SP 464, an application by Healthcare Partners Investments for a special permit to operate a hospital in the O2 district at 9800 Broadway Extension, Ward 7.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is a piece of property that has been before the Planning Commission, I think, 3 separate times now. We had a first zoning case to zone it to O2, and then we had a closing action, and then we took the street to the district court and vacated the rights-of-way, and now we're back for a special permit. And what we have is only a portion of it would actually require a special permit, but we've written a program description for the whole thing. The only portion of the site that would require it is the portion that has the 20 to 25 room overnight stay. Right. The initial phase wouldn't require, but like I said, we put in the program description for the whole site. So staff has 5 TEs that we're in agreement with, and here to answer any questions.
Is that the same operator as the adjacent property?
It is not.
Okay.
But they're obviously aware, and they're apparently singing Kumbaya, according to Mr. Johnson.
Hum a few bars.
There's no protest. I move to approve the application.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 15. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 17 is SPUD 735, application by Rick Orthwine of Skyline Urban Ministry to rezone 500 Southeast 15th Street from multiple districts to SPUD 735 in Ward 7.
Good afternoon. I'm Rick Orthwine, address 500 Southeast 15th.
A long time since I've seen you.
It has.
Tell us what you've got planned, please, Rick.
I have my representative, Phil Fitzgerald, here, our architect, to describe our plans for our project.
I'm Philip Fitzgerald, 3900 North Santa Fe, Oklahoma City. Skyline Urban Ministries impacts lives and empowers those in need to address the roots of poverty in Oklahoma. We're adding on to their existing building a food distribution area for families to come shop, and they'll operate and give food away. The project is in the River Overlay District. We've been before the River Overlay Planning Commission and received their approvals. We've written an SPUD to allow us to build an adjacent parking lot across the street from our site. We've got a small variance to shorten the description from 15th Street from 100 feet to 75 feet to save a 36-inch tree. And we've asked to change, allow to use 100% EFS, which is different than the overlay district, for insulation values and and looking forward for your approval, and would like to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, no one has signed up.
Move approval of the application as submitted.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Thank you.
Item 18 is PUD 1513, application by Paintball of Oklahoma City to rezone 8701 Northeastern Avenue from R1 Single Family to PUD 1513 in Ward 7.
My name is Randall Coles, 11809 Silver Moon Drive, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
And describe your project, please.
What I want to put in is an outdoor sports facility known as a paintball field. We have specifically put into our plan design that we're not rezoning it. I thought it was AA agricultural, but what we've done is specifically targeted that we can run a paintball field as well as sales for paintball items on the property. The reason for this is it's a fun sport. We have a plan layout. We've taken into consideration the neighbors to the east. There's only about 5 residents. I contacted all the residents, told them what we're doing, etc. We've put the parking centralized in the property to keep noise levels down because there'll be a large buffer of trees, as you can see, to keep that from happening. To the west is a television tower, so nobody will be affected by what we're doing on this property. You'll also notice a swath going diagonally across the property. That is a pipeline. You can't even build a dollhouse on top of something like that because of the encroachment laws. So other than people walking across it, which is fine, that would be a very hard area to develop for the R1 residential in the first place. We're not going to be impacting that area because we want to keep the trees as natural cover for the clients to use, things of that nature.
Okay. Any question, Mr. Coles? We do have people signed up to speak.
I did put in a protest letter. You probably have a copy of it for the sidewalk along Eastern Avenue. That would be about 1,300 foot of sidewalk. I'd like to protest that due to the following reasons. I don't know, did you guys get a copy of it?
I've not seen that letter, no.
All right. Well, one was due to it being a rural area, very limited population. Like I said, there's just a handful of residents, and they're all several hundred feet off to the east. They're not even anywhere close to where that sidewalk would be. 2, my main parking area and business is located, of course, hundreds of feet from Eastern Avenue. Shown in the site map, if you look at it, there's no sidewalks on any surrounding area surrounding the property. Also, if you look, the tree line goes right up to pretty close to the street. So trees would have to be removed to do what that is asking for. If the road was ever widened, they would have to tear out the sidewalk, so that would be a waste of money. And most importantly, from a business aspect, it would run about $70,000 to $100,000 in construction costs just to put in that sidewalk that won't be used at all. I also talked with Lance Gross and JJ, and their recommendation when we first designed this is not to have those sidewalks.
Now, Eastern is 4-laned by that property, is that right?
I think so. So traffic shouldn't be an issue, I wouldn't think.
Nor would I anticipate widening anytime soon, like in our lifetime.
That was actually brought up by Lance, so I included that.
Okay, we'll hear from the protesters.
I just have one comment regarding sidewalk. Public Works believes that sidewalks should be constructed in that area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pickle.
My name is James Pickle, and I live at 8420 Northeastern. On the map, my property is just catty corner from where this area is located. The only thing I heard in the applicant's presentation that I agree with is that this is a very sparsely populated part of Oklahoma City. And per the master planning for Oklahoma City, it was intended to be this way. I've lived on my property for 33 years, and while I was there, a huge part of our town in this area was rezoned from whatever it was to R1 with the intention that this be very low-density residential. I even went back after it was blanketed with R1 and requested AA, agricultural, because of animals and things like that and the large acreage that I have. All of the neighbors out here have at least 2.5 acres. Some of them have 5 acres, 10 acres. A neighbor right beside me has 160 acres. I have 80 acres. A new neighbor just bought 40 acres. And we all have one house on our acreages, some 2 houses. The reason we all moved out here was because it is very low-density residential. When one of the previous cases was asked to have all the people that were here in the neighborhood stand up and 3/4 of the crowd stood, that would be more than the people that are in my neighborhood. When we first got the applicant's letter before we were notified of this meeting, we started talking to the neighbors. Northeast 86 goes to the east to a pocket of acreages, pretty much 2.5 acres. I've talked to most every one of them, and they all dump out on Eastern from Northeast 86. None of them are for this. The houses right across the street, I've talked to all but 2 of them. None of them are for this. The 2 with whom I did not speak were not available. There's a brand new church just north of this. I talked to them. They are not for this. We think it is totally incompatible for what our neighborhood has. We don't want the traffic. We noticed that in the application that one of the things was that parking would not be up on Eastern, yet when you look at the application, there is a large area for bus parking. We're very concerned about the traffic in this neighborhood. We are concerned that what he does propose, if this is approved, is just a gravel parking lot. From my understanding, not of the zoning codes, but of the building codes, he will not be able to do gravel parking lot. It will have to be a hard surface parking area. We're concerned about, if he's allowed to do this, the portability of the structures. The restrooms will all be, in my language, porta potties. There will be nothing permanent there. We're also concerned from what we've seen in the PUD that apparently there's a 6-inch water line on Northeastern. I wish there was, because I'd love to get rid of some of my water wells. We're not aware that there is a water line anywhere on Northeastern. North Kelly, yes, but not on Northeastern. Another concern we have with this applicant, he is not the property owner. We are not dealing with the man who owns this land, and we prefer that the people that are coming out into our neighborhood that is zoned residential, single-family, large acreages, and also AA, that they be living with us, that they be dealing with the natural concerns that we have. And that does concern us because this is a temporary use of the land. Even the phasing of this proposed project is if it's successful, if it works, those type of things. We think that our neighborhood is being taken advantage of. Most of these paintball parks, from what I understand, aren't even in Oklahoma City. They're farther out. They're they're farther out in more rural areas that probably don't have any kind of zoning. And we think that somebody has spotted a beautiful tree-covered acreage and says, well, let's get a PUD and let's change the use of this land. That concerns us greatly. We think that this is one of the prettiest areas of all of Oklahoma City, and I think when the master plan was done, when they said this area needs to be preserved for residential, single-family, large acreages, it was to preserve this area, and we do not think that there's any part of this proposed park that meets any of what the master plan intended for this part of northeast Oklahoma City. We desperately request that you deny this PUD application. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Peters. If you give us your name and address, please.
This is Megan Peters. I live at 8521 Northeastern Avenue. And I'm a little nervous addressing all of you guys, but I'll try my best. I'm the property owner that lives directly adjacent. My property line completely abuts this proposed project. I've lived in my home for 19 years. It's a single residence on an acreage, just as Mr. Pickle described. I'm completely in agreement with everything that Mr. Pickles just stated. I'd also like to point out some additional concerns I have. First of all, I am a family with small children. I am concerned for their safety. I don't know if anybody's ever been hit by a paintball. I haven't, but I understand it's very painful. I have a 2-year-old. I'm concerned for him.
Take your time.
Sorry. I think I'm just nervous. Okay. I have well water, as Mr. Pickle stated. I'm concerned that the hundreds of cars that will be parking on gravel will have toxic fluids leaching into my drinking water. When I bought my home 19 years ago, I bought it in a residential area. I did not buy it to live next to a commercial park. When I, 6 months ago, spent $100,000 renovating my home, it was in a residential area, not next to a commercial park. I'm highly concerned about the loss of value to my property. I'm concerned about the safety of my children. I'm concerned about being exposed to hundreds and hundreds of people on a regular basis, including teenagers who might be likely to vandalize my property, who might be considering criminal action and will have easy access from this place. I'm concerned about the plan to place junk cars, fuselage, and broken down looking buildings by a person who is leasing the property, and if they go out of business, there will be no plan to remove those items. I'm concerned about the smell from hundreds of people using porta potties. I'm concerned about the traffic. So again, I would ask you to please consider denying this proposal. Thank you.
Mr. Coles?
Would you put my color plan up, please? On the bathroom issue, yes, we're going to put in some porta potties. We're going to have to at first. I have a plan because if you notice the office that's on there, the office that I'm looking at putting in has bathroom facilities. We'll be putting in a septic system according to code. As far as the neighbors are concerned, I actually had a protest letter, which you probably have a copy of. After actually showing him what we're doing, he rescinded that because of what we're trying to do. Right now, yes, I am leasing the property. We have in the lease a statute that I have first right of refusal to purchase said land and a price that once the business is up and running to purchase the land. We are leasing the upper 20 acres right there. If you scroll down to the bottom of the plan, you'll notice where it says Wild West right there. That is actually not going to be used because of the pipeline that is running right there. See where it splits? There will not be, even if we expand to the lower 20, there will be nothing being done in that lower section because you can't do anything in that lower section. You can't even put up fencing or netting or anything that is required under our PUD. As far as the use of land, we're not tearing down all the trees and putting up concrete foundations or roads or anything of that nature. Also, we're not putting in gravel. We're actually going to be putting down asphalt for the roadway, parking area, things like that. We're using asphalt millings because they're more porous, and then that way it stays within code for the drainage of the property. The paintballs themselves are biodegradable. They are, the shells are actually made out of gelatin. The insides are made out of a base of a cough syrup, basically, to keep it simple. You can eat one. We will have bathroom facilities, so she doesn't have to worry about people urinating and, that type thing. One other thing they're worried about is, teenagers and this, that, and the other. Well, if we're clear up at these 20 upper acres, we're nowhere close to her property. We're not going to be playing on top of her property. We're going to have tree buffers to make sure that no paintballs escape. It is all laid out. Also, we mainly cater to birthday parties, church groups, as well as regular paintball players. So we're not catering. It's an expensive sport to begin with. You have a little better clientele, just to put it bluntly, that show up. We're also going to be running low-impact paintball. It's something the other fields aren't doing. Paintballs currently are 68 caliber. They weigh about 3.1 grams. A 50 caliber paintball, which is slightly smaller, actually weighs 1.25 grams, which is about the third the energy. So when you get shot by one, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't leave big whelps such as the ones that are currently being used at other fields. I'm also going to be using higher-end markers that use pressurized regulators instead of just whatever the CO2. I'm not even going to use CO2, but we're not even going to have CO2. But CO2 can vary in pressure, where you can have a gun that gets hot and it can hurt somebody. We're going to be very regulated. I want people to come back. I want people to have fun. On the plan at the top where it says cars, I had to name it something. Well, actually, there's not going to be anything like that because you can't put any structures like that on that area at all. What we're going to be doing is probably using wooden spools. They can be rolled. They can be easily removed. Since I am leasing the property, I'm not going to be doing a bunch of permanent structures in case, something happens. We're going to have covered rest areas. It's going to be nice. My background, to be quite honest, my father was Alan Cole's Garden. He did a really good job on that place. I don't want to have a paintball field that looks bad. I want something that's nice, high-end, and, make a living doing it. As far as the traffic is concerned, that was addressed with JJ and everybody. The traffic's going to be mainly at the north. It's not going to be near any of the people that are currently protesting. And as far as the use of the land, I can't see a better way to keep it beautiful. The area where the parking is right now, if you look at an aerial view of it, not the one on my screen, but an actual view of it, people are dumping trash there. It's right now, their beautiful piece of land is a dump. You can look at it and you can see the trash from a satellite photo. That whole area is going to be completely cleaned up. The grass that's this freaking high is going to get cut. We're going to have it all cut nice and neat. The bus area that she's talking about that is up by Eastern Avenue, well, that is mainly rollover parking or spillover parking, or a place that if a church bus shows up, they need to have a place to park that they can get in and out easily. So I would love to answer any concerns that you have to the best of my ability.
Commissioners?
What's the term of your lease? How long?
5 years.
5 years?
With the purchase.
Then you have the option of purchase.
Or continue the lease. Well, we'd have to renegotiate the lease, but considering this 20 acres is costing me 3 times the amount of money that the one up in Guthrie, up near Stewart Road, they have 110 acres and they pay $800 a month. I'm going to have 20 acres paying $2,500 a month. With, as they say, location, location, location. Do people really want to drive 30 minutes to go play paintball when I have all these kids telling me, that's 5 minutes from my house? It's a really good location for what we're doing, and I mean, it's just a really good location. It's just like what he said, I saw a really nice location with a lot of trees. I want to keep those trees. I want the place to look nice. People don't want to go somewhere that it smells bad or looks bad. I mean, you lose clients that way, and that's not how you run a business.
Is this your first time taking on this endeavor?
I've been playing paintball for 22 years. I tried to start a paintball field across from Frontier City that is now Carlisle Foods. They tore out all the trees there. So those trees and all that would still be there if I had got permission there. But one of the council members didn't care for it, and that person pretty much killed paintball in the area and pretty much scared everybody off. That person is no longer on the city council, and I think that now it's time to, put something that's in close. If this property doesn't get approved, I have another one that's off of just about a mile away that I'm looking at too, just in case. But this one is more conducive because the area where they've cleared out and they have all the trash and everything, it's a lot easier to haul trash away than it is, carving out a parking lot out of the trees. I also was second place to buy the one up in Guthrie, but I got outbid by Avid Extreme, and that's what kind of prompted this. But I've been playing the game since '91, born and raised here, and I just think it would be a fun project, and I think it would do very well and be very successful. And the owner of the field actually was looking at putting in possibly an academy, Christian academy, a school, also a haunted house. I mean, I don't know if they want she wants a haunted house across the street from her, but, things of that nature.
Mr. Pickle, you have something to add?
Yes, I do. First, I want to say I was a very good friend of Alan Cole's. I knew him through W.W. Steel. He was one of our steel suppliers. And when he built Cole's Garden, everybody was in favor of it. It was on 63rd Street across from the Cowboy. Perfect location for that facility. We don't have any problem with paintball parks. We just have a real problem with this one where they're putting it. I don't blame him for wanting to put it there. It is the perfect location for him, but it's not for the neighborhood. This neighborhood, this master plan for this neighborhood did not carve out 20-acre or 40-acre pieces and say, well, yeah, you can come in and put a paintball park in here and throw in some modular buildings and porta potties. That's not what we want there. Yes, he's going to pay more money for a piece of property like this. It is closer for all of these people, which is our problem with the traffic. The traffic is going to be horrendous because this may be that popular. Now, when we talk about the phasing, yes, the north phase is 20 acres, the south phase is another 20 acres, but this PUD does not discriminate between which one he even does. I mean, he could do the bus parking up on that corner, come down the other corner. The PUD does not address phasing. Now, as far as the easement running through the property, he's absolutely right. You cannot build on those easements, but you can put temporary things on it. And that corner down by Megan's property that he says he won't use because of the easement, you can use it for paintball all day long. He just can't put a building, a permanent structure on it. There is nothing about this that improves our neighborhood. Everything about it is detrimental to those of us who have come out to this part of town and said, we love the master plan that the city approved. That's why we bought there. That's why we've improved our property. This needs to go to one of his other options, and he needs to jump on top of that real quick. As far as the grass this tall, you don't have to mow in AA. It's great for wildlife. We don't need it mowed. We love what it does for our environment out there, and we don't want to see it ruined.
James, let me ask you a question. How far north of 63rd Street and is it 244 that runs along there?
Yes, I-44.
I-44. This is, what, a mile or a mile and a half north of that?
This would be 2 miles, 63rd I-44, a mile north is Wilshire, and this is a half a mile north of Wilshire.
Okay,
Mile and a half.
Mile and a half north, okay. Yeah.
And it's roughly a half a mile south of Britain. Okay. We understand Britain is a commercial corridor. We get that. But even somebody tried to put a large trucking warehouse thing on Britain just west of Eastern, and it was defeated for the very reasons I'm talking about. They didn't want this to be a highly industrial, commercial part of Oklahoma City. We feel that this is just one chink in the armor that's protecting Northeast Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
I just had a comment. I think it's let's be clear. This is not a PUD, right? If the use were coming to us, it would be better for us to understand if it were a PUD. That's one point I think that, at least for me, I had to keep in mind. This is an application to add 2 uses to an R1 zoning. That's it. No PUD, okay? In due respect...
It is legally a PUD. I mean, it's coming to you as a PUD.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The second part of this is this. This area is zoned R1. It's not developed that, James. I agree. I drive that area on a regular basis. I love it. I think it's great. But I think it's more personally susceptible to a big residential development that it's not, there's nothing that sets this aside as large lot space. This can be, Kelly Springs went in at 70th and Kelly. Now, but for the crash, it would have developed. I'm not saying this is a trend, but I think it's important for us to recognize that this allows for how many houses? 20 acres? Can you put on 20 acres? You can put a lot. And there's nothing that restricts that. So I think I think for us to have a view of that area, and James, you know it a lot better than I love that part of Oklahoma City. It's beautiful. It could be developed very obtrusively to the large lot surrounding area because I'm well familiar with the area. And there's not a thing we could do about it. I mean, they'd be platting an R1 neighborhood and in an area that is set aside, it's for urban growth. So I think we need to understand the area.
Just to counter that, but that's not what we have in front of us today. We have a paintball park,
right,
with bus parking, porta potties,
right,
and all these things that I think are not consistent with a rural R1 residential neighborhood. Fully agreeing, Mike, this is R1. You could have an application on that stuff from that guy, and it's going to be how many houses you can put on a 6,000 square foot lot. That's by right that they can do that. You know, but the issue before us is a paintball park.
Right.
Is that consistent and compatible with a residential neighborhood that, and this is kind of confirming your argument, that in the other R1's portions surrounding this paintball park, there could be residential developments, and is that compatible with what can be done in this area? My opinion is it is not, and I would deny it.
And if I could address the possible development of the land, one of the reasons that so much of northeast Oklahoma City does not have the high-density residential development is the topography.
Well, yeah.
And we will take our chances with a responsible residential development. We would welcome it. But most of the people that we see coming out there, it's just the gentleman just bought the 40-acre corner of Wilshire and Eastern. Well, he's building one house on his 40 acres, and that's what most of that land attracts.
But James, it could attract a developer that on a 40-acre tract, he's going to put 150 houses with 6,000 square foot lots. And then, but you say, that's not before us.
Exactly.
This is.
We think this puts that chink in the armor that would, when he loses his lease or whatever, or when that developer outbids him for the next round of leasing, whatever it is, we'll take our chances with a rural developer, but we don't want the precedent to be set with these large parking lots, even if they're off the street, whereas the bus is on the street. We get it. Even that easement running through there will deter some of the residential developers.
I think you change the character of the area once you begin to do something like this. And as Bob said, you can develop right around it with residential, and you're going to have this sitting in the middle, or you're going to encourage development to come down from Britain on Eastern that will change the nature of the area. So, I mean, it's not something I'm in favor of.
Can I address one real quick thing?
Yeah, one more comment, and then we'll take action.
Originally, what we were going to do is do a permit, and I guess JJ's not here right now, and it was advised to me, and JJ actually wrote this PUD, because he says you might as well do a PUD because you're going to have to go through all the hoops for the permit. You might as well do the PUD, and of course, I'm not literate in zoning, so that's what we did. Also, he mentioned that it doesn't addresses the whole 40 acres. I would gladly split that up into pieces. Also, I had discussed with her not using that lower area, which he said that you could. I wouldn't mind excluding that and making it a 3-part, just so that it puts people at ease, because I'm not here to step on people's toes or make their place worse. I'm just...
Now, we know that's not your intention. Okay. That's not a suggestion
But what I'm saying is I can be malleable in the situation of how we have it. If I need to redo the PUD or do it more of a permit, and I wouldn't have any problem splitting the PUD up into a north-south half and carving out a corner that would not be used down in the area where these two people live. I would not have a problem doing that.
Okay, well, we can't negotiate that with you from here.
Well, we could continue it and see if he could do that. But one thing about this whole area, and I live in this area, and I'm real sensitive. I have friends that live in the neighborhood to the east of Eastern there. One of the difficulties is not only the utility out there, but the other difficulty is that a lot of the higher-end developments not moving out there because of the school systems. It's a development that has failed right up at 122nd Street and Martin Luther King and Eastern, because it's the school system that's killed it. So even though this area has laid vacant and it's not developed, they just put a new fence along this property area, but a lot of the houses are gone, and now it's beginning to collect trash and this type of thing. One positive thing I can say about this development is that it is taking advantage of keep it as much of a natural site as it is. It's interweaving within the site, and you could go and put a bunch of little 6,000 square foot lots in there, and that's less compatible than keeping the natural setting. So, you know, I'm not all that opposed to it, and I appreciate the applicant for wanting to restrict his application to where it wouldn't be impeding on them as far as that south 20-acre part. So if you want to continue to do that, I mean, I can support it in that point of view, you know, speaking for myself.
I think the reason we aren't concerned about high-density residential is there's no sewer, there's no water. That's why most of these are larger acreages. I mean, we're all on water wells, we're all on septic, and I think that's why it's not being eyeballed by a lot of the residential developers.
Dick?
There's another issue here. You know, I think paintball pretty neat. And I look at this design he has, and I think I see a lot of potential for a lot of fun. That said, this is basically a commercial endeavor in the middle of a residential area, and as much as I like the design, I just don't think it fits here. You know, regardless of what happens to what's called the lower expansion area or the lower 20 here, gosh, it looks like a lot of fun, but how can you say it's compatible with this area? It's basically a commercial use being added to the existing R1 zoning. Should it be R1 zoning? Probably not. Really, probably should be AA, but that's not before us. But I just don't know that a commercial enterprise right here is what's compatible.
You know, and I kind of feel the same way because, you know, parking is one thing. You know, how many cars are we going to require for this paint facility to have, JJ? Is it on the in our information? If it is, I overlooked it. JJ.
No, he's not here, but usually parking is director approval on these kind of special permits.
Okay. And he says he's going to put it in the middle of this thing, so he's going to have to tear out a bunch of trees. You know, and there is going to be some traffic. I don't think it's compatible.
If you look where my parking is, that's trash and there's no trees. That's one of the reasons I picked this is because I didn't have to do a bunch of tree cutting.
We've spent enough time, I mean, we've heard all sides of this at this point, and I think it's time for a motion.
I move to deny.
We have a motion and a second to deny item 18. Cast your votes. It's denied.
Thank you.
We're on item 19, PUD 1514, application by War Farmland Fund to rezone 16,300 South Pennsylvania from AA agricultural to PUD 1514 in Ward 5.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Chris Anderson. This is an application on approximately 148 acres for a residential subdivision that is really a continuation of the developer subdivision immediately to the east. It's the same developer that developed what you see on your map as PUD 1094, and there's also, I think, north of 1094, a PUD 1276. There is connection between the two. In our PUD, you see Track 2. Track 2 allows the smallest lot size that we have, that being 5,000 square feet with an average lot size of 5,500. That's consistent with what PUD 1094 allows. It allows 5,000 square foot lots throughout. The thing that we require that PUD does not is all of our houses are required to be 70% brick, masonry, or stone. The other two tracks, you have Track 3, which has an average lot size of, I think it's 9,000 square feet, And then Tract 1 will have an average lot size of 6,900 square feet. So this is one in which it's consistent with the comp plan, but it's also consistent and will actually become a part of the development that is to the east, and it's one that staff has recommended approval. There is just one TE, and I think it is just a standard TE dealing with engineering that we are in agreement with. There's a companion plat that's been continued to deal with some right-of-way issues, but as far as the PUD goes, what we have done with this one, similar to what we've done on other ones for this developer, is written in certain amenities that are required around the walking trails, fishing ponds, things like that. So what you see before you is what we'd like to do. We think it's consistent with what we have out there to the east, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
No one signed up, commissioners? Okay, so we've got people in the back. I'm sorry, I don't. We're signed.
We were signed up for 31. We didn't understand.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
19.
My name is Erica Barnhart. My husband is Greg Barnhart, and we live at 15600 South Virginia Avenue. I have a prepared statement that I'll just read for you guys. Let's see. We have lived on South Virginia, which actually dead ends. You can't see it because it's moved. If you'll pull that down just a little bit, our land.
Our house is the second building across the north edge from the west end.
So straight down, yeah. Right, all the way down.
Virginia,
where it dead ends. That dead end, Virginia dead ends into my driveway. Okay, so my property, our property, and the gentleman that's with us, where they're going to put all those little bitty homes, backs right up to our property line. So that's kind of where we're at.
You're on 5 acres or more?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, our land is zoned AA, and the land that they are currently trying to rezone right now is AA, and that's what we want them to keep it at. This kind of is a culmination of our neighbors that live there. It says, I believe that all of us in the surrounding community and adjoining properties want to preserve the zoning and lifestyle that we currently have. Most of us have pasture land, and I know 5 of the 9 houses on Virginia have or had horses or donkeys on their property up until the tornado. The May 20th tornado ripped through the northern portion of our section, leveling several of the homes between us and Southwest 149th, doing significant damage to almost all of our homes. The storm that followed a week later flooded and washed out the north end of our bridge and caused it to fall over 3 feet on the north side. This is a private road, and because of the damage to the bridge, we lost all emergency services, all mail services, and all trash services until we are the 3 remaining homes on the south side of the bridge, were cut off until we paid to fix the bridge. We worked with Cleveland County Commissioner in an attempt to gain temporary access to our land and homes through the property that is being proposed for rezoning, and we were denied because they had already done their development work for this neighborhood and they didn't want to change anything. Thankfully, that's not representative of how the rest of our community came together to help us when we were, stuck. Some of our neighbors did not come to this hearing today because they believe we're up against a Goliath and we can't win. This is in part because we have had utility companies like Cox Cable come out and tell us that they would be offering us services after the first of the year once the neighborhood is put in. One of the maps included with this hearing notice depicts adjoining property with the same kind of densely packed lots as to what is being requested for consideration today. Presumably, these are already approved and in place, referenced as PUD 1094 and PUD 1276. We have not ever received notice of these and have no way of knowing if they're approved or not, but what I can tell you is that the vast majority of these homes are not there, and it makes it look like this is a continuation of an existing neighborhood, and it is not.
I wanted to add, I believe shown in the picture of PUD 1094, I think all the homes with a D designation on them are actually there.
But nothing else.
And in the PUD up at the top of that, the homes, the lots with the little Ds on them, from a satellite image, that okay, those might be the homes themselves. I thought it was a letter D. I'm sorry. Those Those are there. Everything else sketched is not, as of this moment. And I really have no idea if those PUDs are approved.
They are.
Okay.
Both?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we didn't know about them. As with many of our neighbors, my family has been displaced from our home while repairs are being made. We've been living in rent houses in neighborhoods very similar to that which is being proposed. We return almost every day trying to put our homes and our life back together, and we very much look forward to returning to our land and lifestyle and getting away from the densely packed neighborhoods. As far as I know, this is such a desirable area, community, and lifestyle that everyone on our street that was displaced by the tornado is rebuilding and returning. I understand that not everyone has had the opportunity to live in an acreage property like this, by this kind of agricultural zoning, but those of us that bought into that dream so many years ago very much want to protect it and preserve it. I understand that the current property owner has a vested interest in requesting this rezoning. The proposed rezoning would increase the residential density by more than 15 times what it is currently zoned for, and this rezoning would make their land much more valuable per acre. But unfortunately, it would happen at the expense of all of the existing landowners and current residents. The map on the hearing shows 12 to 13 lots being proposed backed right up to my south property line. I can't imagine anyone here would like 13 new neighbors on any side of their property. There are not any structures on the land being considered for rezoning, and thus no one is living on that property right now. I believe it is only prudent and fair to first give consideration to those of us who are there and have been. I'm not implying that they shouldn't be allowed to do anything with their land. I'm saying they should do it within the current zoning that it already has. It's not always directly apparent what a change in the community will do to an area. For example, some of the development and dirt work has already begun on the land being considered before this committee today. The resulting impact was probably not apparent nor even considered. However, it did have an impact on the surrounding properties. They have gone in and removed a pond, and when they did this, dozens, if not hundreds, of displaced frogs, salamanders, snakes, and everything else took up residency on my property or in my pool. When we lost power due to the tornado, thousands upon thousands of tadpoles were hatched in my pool. I have never seen that kind of infestation. It was bad. Additionally, this particular section of land has had its school district rezoned several times due to overcrowding, so much so my kids have gone to 4 different elementary schools in 11 years. Now, with 2 of the elementary schools and more gone by the tornado, I'm not sure this kind of housing, I'm not sure the school systems could handle this kind of housing. In closing, the proposed rezoning would most certainly negatively impact all of the existing residents surrounding this property and would be an invasion to all of us who have already had so much taken away from us this year. We just hope that you please consider keeping it AA zoned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Carter. My address is 1324 Southwest 155th. My property is just north of their dividing line right there. And my concern with this is all of the houses on the north edge of their boundary, which puts approximately 6 houses at the back of every property owner's home until it comes to their property, which dramatically increases. If this is approved, I would like to see a proposal or an amendment that would direct to where the north row of houses be eliminated to where there's a green belt there, and also a 7-foot sound barrier fence, not wood, stone, rock, or brick, that would redirect any sound from this much housing going on. My property is zoned AA. I'm agricultural also, as a lot of my neighbors are out there. We've been out there 10 years. It's nice to get up in the morning and see the cows and the llamas running around out back when you're having coffee. I know progress is inevitable, but it seems to me if there's going to be some kind of progress to this density, that there needs to be something done for the previous people that's lived there and that has enjoyed the semi-rural life that we've had for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Just a couple points on PD 1094 and 1276 that obviously the commission knows those are already zoned, but it's also already platted. And on the north, there's actually a separation right now in the depiction you see. The largest, I guess, buffer would be there. Chris tells me it's 30 to 40 feet is what this depiction shows between the property line and the property line north of us. So as the plat's laid out currently, there would be a buffer along that northern edge. So,
what are the lot sizes along there, David?
Tract 2 has an average lot size of 6,900 square feet. And Tract 1 has 6,900 square feet. Tract 2 has average of 5,500. And then adjacent in 1094, it doesn't require an average. It just it allows 5,000 square foot lots throughout I think it's 100 and so acres.
Doesn't city ordinance require that these lots be at least 7,500 square feet? Is that not right, Russell?
Well, that's R1 to R1.
Oh, so it doesn't apply to this?
Not to double A.
No,
To the north.
it's R1 to R1 as a... Oh, I see. So we don't give the same consideration to AA?
No.
That's it?
And I think
that's always been the policy. This is in an urban growth area.
Like Russell said, it's urban growth, but it's also a PUD, and it's the same reason that 1094 was approved with 5,000 square foot lots up against AA.
I don't need to go. I was teasing.
And that was just a couple of years ago that was approved.
But 1094 stopped along that north line there, and those really only abut 2 5-acre lots.
1094 goes much further than 1094 goes all the way up to the section line.
No, where I'm going with you, though, is now we're going farther west all the way to Penn, whereas 1094 stopped back, I can't tell from looking at this how far back, but
it runs in where you see the dark line. What would be northeast of that dark line is 1276.
But what I'm talking about is, if you look at what's on the screen, at the bottom where it says unknown zone, and our line for this property that's being zoned would cut the little corner out down there, the southeast corner. But for there west to Penn, 1294 didn't encroach to the west, where this is encroaching all the way to Pennsylvania onto whatever there are up there on the north side, a half a dozen 5-acre lots. And it is not R1 to R1, but there certainly is some incompatibility there.
And to that, I would say we don't think it's incompatible. We think it's compatible with the comp plan, but also the exact same issue that this commission would have looked at in 1094, except we require brick homes, whereas 1094 didn't, and we have a slightly higher average, and 1094 didn't. So this is a better product than what was just approved by this commission, abutting the exact same use and the exact same size of lots.
Well, this kind of gets into the area of whatever considerations there were for 1094 to stop at that place, because to the west of 1094 it was all AA, as this particular plot is right now, AA. And if you look at the map and you see all the density that 1094 anticipates, although there's probably maybe a half a dozen, maybe a dozen houses built according to the Ds. The line of demarcation at that point, 1094, was that line. And what I see is on three sides, it's surrounding AA surrounds this in another very dense development. And I don't think it's compatible, and I really can't support it.
And the only reason the line of demarcation was there is because that was all they could acquire. But I think it's crucial that this is an urban growth area. This is area designated by the city for this exact type of development. And so it wasn't a line of demarcation. That's the property they had at the time, and they have platted all of that 1094, and now it's been successful. And because of the comp plan and the services that are available, that's why you now see this application before you.
There is an issue of compatibility that we also consider, and I don't think this is compatible with three sides of the development, and that's why I can't support.
I think it has the same compatibility that 1094 had that this body approved.
David, how much buffer are you putting between the AA and your R1 and your R2?
On the north side?
North side.
Right now, around 40 feet is what it's proposed to be.
I don't have an aerial of that. Does that have a lot of trees on it or anything? Or?
There's a power line that runs right across that north edge, and there's a 25-foot easement each side of it.
So we're getting the power line easement, basically.
Well, I think there are going to have to be maybe some, it's proposed to be platted as common area maintained by the HOA. More than 25 feet. I think it's around 40 feet.
Okay.
I don't know what was considered when PUD 1094 was presented. I wasn't given notice, even though my proximity to the area. But at the time, the ownership included what's being proposed today, which was the major adjoining property to PUD 1094 at the time. So there would have been two homes that had an objection to this at that point, or at least I suspect as much. Now this affects quite a bit more.
Okay, commissioners? Again, we've heard pro and con here.
I can give you some answers on your easement along that north side there. There's been rerouted saltwater disposal lines that have been ran through there, and it was Williams Construction that done that at the time. And the original easement was for the 25 feet each side of the fence line due to the power lines there, but with the saltwater disposal and the oil transfer lines that go through there, I do believe that's what determined what appears to be some type of green belt between the property line and the back property line of the north side of the fence. That's why I would like to see that increased. I myself work in the oil industry, and I do know that a lot of these people's homes that are going to be on this north side here will be extremely inconvenienced should they have to go in and do some type of repairs to these lines, and also with the noise factor and the encroachment on the agricultural people.
Thank you.
One more thing I'd like to add. I believe I heard earlier in an earlier debate that there was a ratio from one addition to another addition.
But that applies only when it's R1 abutting R1.
Okay, that's what you were referring to in that conversation.
I thought it applied here, and it does not. That was my question.
I believe it should apply more here. Thank you.
I don't disagree with that, but unfortunately it doesn't.
Well, I'm not going to be the popular one, but it doesn't really matter. Just looking at the aerial view, which I am on my phone, and trying to figure out the exact distance from the actual houses, the residential structures that are on the properties to the north, I mean, there are several that are several hundred feet, I would say, from what is being proposed. If I remember correctly, this was what the city of Moore wanted to put a sewage treatment plant when I first started on this commission, which we defeated. This thing is going to get developed at some point, regardless of, in my opinion, because it's prime for that. This is where the city is moving. Penn Avenue and 164th is not, it's a road I travel every single day. It is not something that is the most desirable road, but at some point this is going to be developed. I don't have any particular issues with this, regardless of what the motion is. I will not have the popular opinion here. I will go ahead and move for approval.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 19. Cast your votes. It's continued 4-4.
Okay, we would ask that it go to council without a recommendation. I think if we look back at the amount of times that we've had a full 9 people here, I don't think it's fair to the developer to continue it. We don't know that there'll be 9 people here the next time.
Do a motion to deny or a motion to refer to the city council without recommendation, whichever the commission prefers.
We just passed a okay.
I'll move to send it to council without recommendation.
Second. Okay, cast your votes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that means that this will go to city council in about a month. Not sure the exact date. So if you want to represent your views again, then you would have to show up at the city council meeting. This is the last time it'll be heard here.
Let's do item 12 and continue it.
Okay. Yes, you get this, there'll be same notification. So if you got notification this time, you get it next time. David, can we do item 12? Are you going to continue that?
Yes, we're fine with continuance to the 12th December.
So I move to continue. I believe there's somebody here to speak on it.
Is there anyone
Item 12, that's PUD 1511.
Yes. Give us your name and address.
Alan Gann, 5400 North Grand Boulevard, Oklahoma City.
The applicant is going to ask to continue this to our December 12th meeting.
Okay.
Is that agreeable with you?
It's agreeable.
Okay.
I move to continue the item to December the 12th meeting.
Second.
Cast your votes, and it's continued to December 12th.
We are now on item 21, which is C-6538, preliminary plat of Lone Oak Villas at Ward 8.
Brandon Kuhn with Hewitt Zollers, 2832 West Wilshire. We have a 75-lot subdivision. We have 9 TEs, and we agree with all of them. Happy to answer any questions you have.
No one signed up.
I'll move approval. Sorry, Nick.
The only comment I would have is, gee, if you'd have been a real sharp engineer, surely you could have squeezed 2 or 3 more lots in there.
We'll work on that.
Okay. Something between now and final.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 21. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Nick, you're not voting?
Thank you.
Now you are. Now Janice is. Good.
Item 22 is C-6542. This is a preliminary plat of Clearwater, Section 2 in Ward 3.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson with Johnson & Associates representing the applicant. As you are aware, this is a kind of an odd-shaped piece of property that's left over from Highway 152 construction and ODOT right-of-way takes. This was previously preliminary platted, and then Phase 1 was developed and rezoned to allow for duplexes. This is now coming back as duplexes as well, and so we're submitting a new preliminary plat to allow for two things: better street circulation, for one, than the other preliminary plat had, and then the allowance for the duplex lots. We have a boulevard double street entrance coming into the first fork in the road, and then as you can see by the development of the grid pattern, we've tried to create the circulation so that there's no more than 30 lots hanging out there with only single access. Talked to Mike Wilson today, and he asked that we include an emergency access, which we have on the far southwest cul-de-sac. We've got an emergency access easement as part of the plat that goes into the commercial property that is owned by the same owner. And we have a lot of TEs, but I agree to all of them. We have 3 variances because of the odd shape of the property.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult piece of property.
Well, staff has a deferral request. Has that been addressed?
Yes, we've worked with traffic and got that resolved.
That's correct.
And I failed to mention that, like in one of the first items today, we would like to also add a TE pursuant to Public Works request that there would be no, on the final plat, would be no lots in the floodway. We've got a pending LOMR application at FEMA that's been there for several months. This preliminary plat is developed based on the approval of that LOMR.
Tim, when some of these lots already developed with roads and everything?
Not on this side.
On that, which side was it?
The east side is fully developed.
Oh, okay, okay.
Is anybody concerned about, when you go into this subdivision, these are all duplexes, and you have an oval racetrack that goes way up and around and way down without any impediment whatsoever from there to there to there. It's a really long stretch of highway that people can go very fast and very quick, and with duplexes you've got lots and lots of people lined up all along both sides of those that I could look at as like a racetrack. And that really does concern me. I think that this needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully about breaking it up, putting impediments in there so that the traffic doesn't have, we've got this block length variance. And that's really, Tim, somebody needs to scratch and erase and do something, because you're the guy on a motorcycle and he's going to have a great time. Or whatever, but it's, there's nothing to stop it.
Well, I would bring up the fact that, number one, this is a curvilinear street, and there are undulations in the curves. There are also points of access from the adjoining cross streets that we put in for the very reason I mentioned earlier, for circulation for emergency vehicles. But frankly, this would be no different than a standard grid street in Mesta Park. You could do the oval around that as well. This is just it's just a curve of a grid pattern. This is as gritty as you can get.
I know that the fire department has commented, well, I don't know, they haven't recently, about speed humps, stop signs.
There could be some stop signs added, but that's a traffic commission item.
And I'd like to encourage traffic commission to consider those speed humps, not bumps, but just something that would impede what I can see just to be, they're curvilinear, but Tim, that's all the more fun if you're driving a car really fast and you can just, there's no impediments. And I think somebody needs to go back to a drawing board with regard to this block length thing.
I wore out several pencils working on this piece of property.
Well, the analogy to Mesta Park is lost on me.
Me too. I don't get it, because that's
it's a standard grid. It's
too many intersections which you can't race through.
Well, that's what we have here. And if you put stop signs per traffic commission's desire, that would be a traffic control measure that could be included in this plat, but it won't happen until the plat's developed, because the commission won't act on it. The other thing you mentioned, humps or any kind of speed impediments are not currently permitted in our code. This is not a private street.
But we still have the issue about subdivision regulations on block lengths.
On block lengths.
Block lengths. That's
Right.
what you've got. You've got block lengths that are, 600 feet longer than what's proposed. I think that's what the staff report said, something like that. But that's really concerning what this could turn out to be.
Tim, are you as close as you can get to the creek on the north side?
Yes.
That floodplain, is that what that is? That's why you're not moved over into that
That's correct.
area? And on street lengths, do the T intersections not impact that? Is that why you have issues with your block lengths? And clearly you have a number of cross streets here, but is it because they're not actual intersections?
I'd have to have the staff respond to that.
I just think, Janice, sometimes there are pieces of property that, when they're difficult to develop, don't need to be developed to the maximum density in order to come up with something that's livable. And this looks like as many lots as I can get in on a piece of property.
I still wanted an answer to my question.
The block lengths, the subdivision regulations say you measure it from one end of the property line to the other. It doesn't mention street breaks or intersections when you measure a block. It just has the maximum length.
So, for example, would be like Block 2, which runs along the entire rear of our property that is highway right-of-way. So it's an extremely long block with no breaks. There's no place to break it.
But okay, the fact that there are breaks on the other side of the street doesn't count.
No.
I see, okay. Well, so I guess one thing you could do is take out a few of those lots along in Block 2 and do something else with them.
I mean, what would you suggest adjacent to State Highway 152? They just recently put in a signal at at 59th and 152 because of the growth in that area. There's a huge demand for this size home in that area. It's a great place for a duplex property. Adjacent to our property to the east is a huge grocery warehouse. We have commercial zoning along Council to our east. This is a great buffer for highway versus industrial, and it's successful. There's a lot of desire to live along the creek. There's going to be improvements in the common areas that make this a sustainable neighborhood. So, Commissioner Yokel, I know, the thought is, well, maybe you don't have to make it so dense, and maybe if we were dealing with single-family detached, it would be easier to do that. With duplexes, they don't want to maintain extra land. And we did look at a layout where we ran a single street with a cul-de-sac on the end, but you end up wasting a lot of property. So the expense of putting in all the additional cross streets really boils up the cost of development in this case.
Well, no one has signed up, so we need a motion on the variance, starting with the variances.
Did you say you were in agreement with all the TEs?
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve.
Well, we need to do the variances.
Is there a variance?
Three, I think.
3 of them.
2 or
okay.
3.
We just need to add another T regarding the...
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Ones are there.
Okay.
Add one for...
Yeah, no lots in the floodway is but we have the language. Okay, we need variance T number 2. We start, Jim?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion second to approve the variance to TE number 2. Cast your votes. That passes. Variance to TE number 4.
Motion.
Motion is second to approve the variance to TE 4. Cast your votes. And
What about 3? No 3.
it says if the variance
Just
must comply with fire. But it's not a variance.
There are only two.
Yeah, it's not a variance.
I'm sorry, I said 3. Apologize.
And then add the one for Public Works.
Well, we need to add the language developed by Public Works, which would be TE 12, no lots in the floodway is the shorthand version.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 22. Cast your votes. And you're approved.
Thank you.
Item 23 is C6543, is final plat of Castlebrook Crossing, 3rd edition, Ward 3.
Jason Spencer with Crafton Toll & Associates, representing the applicant. So what I've got is the 3rd edition of Castlebrook Crossing. This edition will connect sections 1 and 2. It consists of 53 single-family lots on 19 acres. It conforms to the preliminary plat. Staff has recommended approval, and we're in agreement with all the TEs, and we'd request approval at this time.
And no one has signed up.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 23. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Thank you.
Item 24 is C6545, final plat of Hanger Clinic in Ward 8.
Hello, Tim Johnson, Johnson Associates. This is a piece of commercially zoned property that is being developed into a continuation of the medical offices that are being done in Quellbrook Section 2. The PUD requires that this property be platted, so that's why we're here. Lot 1 of Block 1 is a project that's being permitted currently, or has a permit currently, is under construction. The staff report talks about the requirement of running utilities to all 3 lots. We did extend utilities to lots 1 and 2, but not to 3, so I would request that when we bring the final plat to council that we eliminate lot 3 at this time, because it's not ready to be developed until after lot 2, where we'll bring the utilities up through the development.
Lot 3 is the one with the electronic billboard on it?
Yes, sir.
Now, answer something for me, Mr. Johnson. This PUD is a C3 PUD, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the only way you can have a billboard in C3 is if it's undeveloped land, correct?
I'm not sure how, I wasn't involved in that sign issue, and I know it went to the Board of Adjustment.
Well, this commission was involved with that sign issue.
And I understand that.
And now we're developing this C3 land. The PUD is very clear on what the signage should be. Previously, the applicant was erroneously granted a variance, or not a variance, a permit for that sign. When the city discovered its error, that permit was revoked. However, that was appealed, and therefore we now have a billboard sitting on PUD 1198 or whatever its number is. However, it's still a C3 PUD. It's now time to develop it, so we either develop it and take the billboard down, or leave it undeveloped and leave the billboard. What's your pleasure?
If you define development as filing a plat, then I would say that it would have to come down at the time the plat's recorded. If you define development as the development of the tract of land, then it's until Lot 2 is developed, which could be soon or it could be 2 years from now.
Well,
Lot 1 right now is the current lot under development.
They are playing in the dirt on this PUD right now.
We are here because of the requirement of the PUD to file plat.
I understand. So that PUD limits signage to 12 feet. You went in the back door to get the billboard, but now you're contrary to the requirement of the subreg that you can't develop C3 with the sign on it. So why should we take action on this plat today? Or why should we not deny this plat until there's something done about this.
And I'll take the term "we" being the previous developers, previous applicant, but in this particular case, our responsibility is to the developer of the building, of which we've done their plans, and we are before you with regard to the plating requirement of the PUD. We could come back, I could amend this application and say, I want my final plat to be of Lot 1 only. There's nothing in the PUD that requires me to plat the entire block. We thought it would be better for the Planning Commission to plat the entire block. The issue with
Well,
Tract
this plat
3...
before us appears to be a single lot.
No, there's 3 lots in the block.
Yeah, that map is incorrect. We have the correct map up here.
Well, you've carved out. It appears you're carving out the billboard.
And that's what I mentioned first thing, is that we'll eliminate Lot 3 and include it as part of Lot 2.
Well,
so it's not carved out independently as part of this plat.
I think that's inconsistent with what the PUD required. If you'd like to review the PUD and the public hearing at this issue and at the council, here are the CDs.
Okay. I have copies. We're trying to fulfill the requirement of the PUD. If the staff, in our conversations with the staff, we had to file a plat, so we're here filing the plat. The issue with the sign is a separate issue relative to whatever they got approved at the Board of Adjustment, which I apologize, I'm not prepared to, I don't know the answer to that. Not recognizing that the sign was going to be an issue. I was more concerned about the utility service to Lot 3 than I was the sign.
Well,
because the subregs do address required utility services to all platted lots. In this particular case, we're not ready to extend the sewer, which is in the far northeast corner of this.
Well, is electricity not a utility?
It's all there. And the subregs really only deal with water and sewer, and street. So we have water, sewer, we have water and street, we don't have sewer. They're not ready to extend the sewer past Tract 1 until they're ready to develop Tract 2. And so that's why I'd suggest pulling 3.
Why don't Tracts 1, 2, and 3 show up in my staff report?
The map's wrong.
They do.
The map is wrong.
You can see it
staff
on the...
report does.
I can see it on the screen, but I'm asking why I didn't have that to think about before now.
Okay, if I could. I know we don't like the billboard. I get it. But he's just going to carve it up and come back as 1, 2, 3. He doesn't have any choice. So we need to just decide if we want him to do that so he can take his continuance, get on down the road, and do 1, 2, 3 as in a serial basis.
Well, if we deny the plat, he's done.
No, I think they'll be back.
Well, he can come back
They got a
again.
building under construction. It's not going away. I mean, these are real-life people out there. Who's going to occupy that, Tim?
Some doctors, Dr. Hanger.
So, I mean, we got a bad deal on the billboard, but we have to move on. We just have to move on in some way.
This is a contiguous piece of property. It's Zone C3. It's not consistent with the PUD. And I'm sorry they put the cart before the horse, but I'm not willing to support this plat.
Didn't make a motion. I'm ambivalent. We're going to see it back.
I would request that we be allowed to continue this item so that we can come back to the commission with a revised plat that allows this particular development to go forward.
You can do that with a denial.
Then you have to pay a new fee.
Don't I have to wait 6 months and pay a new fee?
I know. Have a motion to deny.
I can't support that because I get your point, Nick. I got it, but I'll second the motion so we can
straight
vote
with
on it.
us from day one. If you'll recall, that billboard issue was put before the Board of Adjustment. It was withdrawn, continued, withdrawn, continued. Then it became an appeal. We're not dealing with honorable people here. we don't need to give them a break.
We have a motion and a second to deny item 24. Cast your votes.
Fails.
Let's continue.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to item 25, PC 10347, application by Vance One Properties to rezone 4133 North Lincoln from C3 to I2 moderate industrial, Ward 7.
Before we move on, I'd like to say, I actually am not sure that I am as informed as you are, Councilman or Commissioner Gales, about all the details of that process. I do think that it is relevant and pertinent to the decision that we're going to make here. And I would like for us to talk that out and also to explore what legal ramifications there are to our decisions on either side of approval of plat. I'm not fully persuaded by the comments that you made, but I'm sympathetic to them, and I would like to know more about the details of that before we hear this again.
My vote was for my time. I mean, it's going to come back. I mean, that was where I got to. Due respect to Tim, he gets paid for this. This was protection of my time, so far as dividing that thing up. So, your point's always. I understand where you're coming from, Nick. So, on item 25, JJ informed us earlier that this guy had phoned in just a request for a continuance about 2 hours before the meeting on number 25. I'm not personally inclined to grant that, nor am I personally inclined to approve this application anyway.
Well,
so I'll move for denial.
I'm inclined to deny it. Nothing has changed in all of the times that it's been continued.
Yeah.
Staff?
Motion to deny.
Go back. All right. We have a motion and a second to deny item 25. Cast your votes. And that's denied. Janice, did you vote? There you go. Thank you.
All right. Item 26, ABC 796, application by Oki Restaurant for an ABC 2 at 7801 North May Avenue, Ward 2.
Dwight, what will this be?
I beg your pardon, sir?
What will this be?
This is a Margarita's restaurant. Back when I worked for the previous engineer I worked for before Anchor Engineering, I'd walk out of his back door and into this little Mexican restaurant called Margarita's. But they only had an ABC1 license. The building wasn't conducive to put the whiskey in. So they have since moved across the street to an old Pizza Hut, which works out beautifully. And I agreed to help them out all I could and come down and see if I could get it approved for them to actually, oh, by the way, Romero's wife's name is Margarita, is where the restaurant got its name.
Well, I have to say margaritas are nice. I approve of the application.
A motion and a second to approve item 26. Cast your votes. And you're approved.
Thank you very much. You guys should swing by and have one.
We are on to item 33 now, C6541, preliminary plat of Four Corners Estates in Ward 1.
Now,
Tim
here we
Johnson
have three
again.
variances.
No billboards on this sign of this property that I know of. This is a 80-acre tract of land that's being developed by the builders that are developing the 80 to the north, which we did years and years ago. So it's a continuation of the same size lots and concept. There's no sewer in the area. There is a request on the staff report about a variance for sewer. There is a physical sewer that is within the half a mile, but it's not physically possible to get over across the highway and get to it. As the 80 acres to the north is, it all drains to the north. So this will be on septic systems and public water. These are all 30,000 square foot lots generally. The excluded tract of land on the south is an oil well site, and there's a tower on the corner. Those are the pieces that are excluded from the tract. I agree with all the staff's technical evaluations. Request your approval.
So you basically have 3/4 acre lots,
Yes, sir.
96 lots on 76 acres.
No one signed up. Three variances.
It fits in the area. I'll move variance TE3.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance TE3. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Move the variance to TE4.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance TE4. Cast your votes. That's approved.
And we'll move the variance to TE5 additionally.
A motion and a second to approve the variance to TE5. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
And now the application.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 33. Cast your votes. And that's approved. That concludes the items for individual consideration. Planning committees. Planning Commission members. Janice?
Yeah, early today, I guess we ended up continuing the matter of the private road going public, and, since that was at the stage it was at, I didn't want to get into all of that right then, but I certainly think that before we start accepting private roads and making them, presto chango into public roads, as sympathetic as I am to people having to walk to bus stops and that kind of thing, it's going to have to be more than it would really be nice and more convenient for us if. And I think that is a huge policy step we're taking there, and that we need some input from staff and some real discussion amongst ourselves, more than perhaps we can have based on an individual application before us.
I think the policy now rests probably in the Public Works Department. Would that be right?
Yeah. Well, but also before we can do it, I believe that they have to be evaluated. Certainly are to city standards. Many of those private roads are not. Well, I believe to the one today, yes.
Well, but there's a logical question too. Why, from a financial standpoint, does the city want to take on more miles of road than it already has to maintain? I think it deserves some discussion, because it.
I have just one question about the process, though. If we say no, does that then go to council?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it's Public Works policy, why are we even dealing with it? What's the... I think it needs some investigation. I guess we're to Planning Department, Russell? Goodbye, Russell. Oh, no, not yet.
I have a couple more meetings to do. I'll say farewell in a couple of months. I know John was at the symposium and that we had a couple of weeks ago, and James was there for a while. I don't know, was anybody else there?
Nick was there.
Nick was there for a while, yeah. But it went off extremely well. I thought, it was a 5-hour symposium, but all the consultants did an excellent job, and it just flowed well. We weren't any technical glitches. The whole thing just went off really well, so I was really happy with it. And I'll say this many times, but my staff are fantastic, did an excellent job of pulling the whole thing together and managing these consultants and ensuring that the materials that they presented on the day were understandable and relevant to what the message that we wanted to get across. So, in that respect, I believe the plan is in good hands as I leave. So.
Speaking of people leaving, Rick Kane's retiring. I'm not sure everyone knows that. He's retiring within the next month or two, isn't it?
I think so.
Rick Kane, who heads COTPA.
I think Rick actually leaves in February.
Does he?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's moving toward the exit anyway. Anything else, Russell?
We're having another Citizens Advisory Team meeting. We're doing policy discussion. We haven't set the date yet in December. I think staff are contacting you about your dates of availability.
I've asked to get copies of the draft reports on which the comments and questions are based. And I'd actually prefer you print it for me so I don't have to go through reams of my own paper to come up with something. I don't know if anyone else wants to see those.
I would.
Yeah. But that would inform for me the questions I'm seeing in the surveys that are coming out.
And then on December the 12th, we do intend to have a study session as well. We're going to talk about demographic trends. And then Ian Colgan, who is heading up the Urban Redevelopment Division, will be talking about the Downtown Strategic Initiative and our proposed downtown development framework.
Municipal Councilor, you want us to go into executive session?
It's been a long meeting. I don't think it's really necessary. I was going to brief the commission a little bit on the latest Lone Oak appeal from Lone Oak East. It's a little bit different posture than the previous one, but it's late, and I could do it on the 12th just as easily.
We continue to approve building COs as we go along?
No, this is...
I'm sorry, Lone Oak. Yeah. Never mind. I'm easily confused. It's 5 o'clock or later.
Exactly.
Anything else, Commissioners?
Yes, I have something to say about the competency and the work of the Planning Department and the admiration and respect I have for the Director of the Planning Department, and wishing all of you a happy Thanksgiving, as well as every single one of you planning commissioners that I enjoy working with. Happy Thanksgiving, and have a safe trip for wherever you decide to go.
Thank you. And we're adjourned. I made that motion.